There are 477 crafting engrams in ARK Survival Ascended, ranging from a campfire at level 2 to a full auto rocket turret at level 99. But that would be too easy. So I put the XP rates on 0 times, and now I can't craft anything. And I know what you're thinking. Who would be stupid enough to even attempt to play the game like this? Well, meet Carl. He's level 1 in every aspect of his life, and he has 100 days to take down Mama Brood, Papa Pithecus, and Doug to ascend from the island. By the way, even white supply drops require level 3. Yeah, these 100 days were insane. So after loading in, Carl assessed his limited knowledge. I can mine a rock, commit arson, and write a story about it. And he instantly got to work, farming some berries for food and punching some trees as hard as his little arms could hit them. And after about 45 seconds, Carl reached the limits of his knowledge, having already crafted everything that he learned in his entire life. Okay, so what do I do now? The first thing that Carl needed to do to beat this challenge was find some protection. And close by, he noticed a parasaur on the beach. So he attempted to make a friend. Carl isn't very fast. I look like a toddler. Look at my knees! My knees are weak and my arms are heavy. But even though the parasaur got away, Carl was not ready to give up just yet, and he focused his efforts into taming this Hesperornis. Ah! Help! Carl has been deleted.
Emotional damage.
Now Carl's alive again. Yeah, he's also level 1 at dying, which I guess is kind of a good thing. Anyway, Carl finally met a creature that couldn't say no to his friendship. Yeah, someone needs to teach Carl a better method of making friends. But it actually worked, and that is the story of how Carl met Cluck Norris. Carl's confidence was at an all-time high as he harnessed the power of friendship and he discovered the power of fire. Man's getting roasted. He was now laser focused on the objective of strengthening his army. No, he swam away. Why, did I just say swam? He knocked his dillo out with his bare hands. Yes. And he fed it the other dillo, but at least it was cooked. He decided to name her Karen because she's toxic. And after sending out a desperate message to Vin Diesel, a degenerate appeared from the forest. But luckily, with Karen's toxicity and Carl's fire, and Cluck Norris's emotional support, they were able to live for another day. Correction, another 3 seconds. Anyway, Carl's still really bad at dying, so he just walked right back over. And now he actually has a shirt, even though he's still not wearing pants. Carl's a bit of a savage. After realizing how effective that torch was at killing the raptor, Carl decided to make a couple more. And then after this happened, bro, these torches are amazing. As nightfall approached, the squad began to head north, and the goal at this point is to continue to tame things and use them to kill other things. Ow. So hopefully we can get a bow, maybe some arrows, maybe a slingshot, you know, some method of knocking out better creatures. So on day 2, Carl initiated a 1v1 against this dillo, and he punched the thing so hard that he broke his leg. I'm gonna die. And after setting the dillo up in an arranged marriage with Karen, I experienced firsthand a brand new feature in this game. Ow! Yo! No! Are you serious? Karen, did you see that? Anyway, Carl named Karen's husband Lil Spit, and as they were being toxic together, he once again attempted to tame a parasaur. Oh, he's stuck. Oh, he's not stuck. Oh, he's stuck again. Oh, he's not stuck. He ran away. So as they continued on their journey, lighting fire to everyone in their path, I don't make the rules. Carl came across a baby parasaur. So out of the goodness of his heart, he was ready to adopt the poor orphan, but then he realized, did you kill the baby parasaur?
Karen, what is wrong with you?
Anyway, Carl perished, and then after he managed to get his stuff back, Carl deceased. Starting back from basically square one, Carl tried to grab an explorer note in a desperate attempt to level up. It didn't work. But then Carl noticed a white supply drop being sent down from Vin Diesel, and for the first time in his life, he actually had some hope. Carl's face filled with excitement as he waited on the drop to become accessible. Carl has been trolled, and now Carl was very sad. So he swam out into the ocean, and then he died. But Carl wasn't giving up. This was actually Carl's enlightenment. He knew exactly what he needed to do. So he gathered some berries and he crafted all 3 of his engrams. He wasn't able to continue north because of that. Carl ran. He takes a bit of a detour through the forest, and as nightfall approached, he came across a Rex, and the only thing scarier than a Rex is a Rex playing Dance Dance Revolution. Carl has 2 left feet, so he was about to turn around and dip, but then he noticed something. That Rex was not actually square dancing. He was fighting some dimorphs and losing. And after the dude got absolutely destroyed, Carl looted his body, and there is a slingshot. I think this is the very first time I've ever been excited about seeing that. For the level 1 challenge, this is low-key better than even having a bow because it only requires stone rather than arrows, meaning Carl has unlimited ammo. Yeah, Carl got a bit carried away. But anyway, after knocking out this dodo just to set his unconscious body on fire, Carl continued his villain arc by trying to kill this trike so he could claim the babies, but apparently torches don't work on trikes. So he kept shooting it with the slingshot as he backed up and kited it across the beach. And Carl accidentally led this family of trikes into a Rex. Now, I want to give credit where credit's due. Carl did try to help out the trikes. He hit the Rex with like 35 stones, which at this distance literally take like 2 seconds to reach the target, by the way. But after the Rex finished his breakfast triketo, he made eye contact directly with Carl. Carl ran for his life, and then he got what he deserved, to be honest. So after retrieving his cloth shirt, he tried to shoot this Itchy with his slingshot, but inadvertently ended up hitting himself in the face. He then noticed a baby raptor that was literally all alone, like for real this time, and it was running down the beach. So he followed, trying to see if he could claim it as his own. But the raptor baby actually just led him back to a pack of like 8 raptors. Carl got baited. And after immediately dying again, Carl then took his anger out on this turtle, repeatedly punching him until he fell asleep. There was really no purpose for this. I don't know why he did it. But after that, he started taming an entire pack of hyenas. And if he managed to get this tame, he would have a really solid method of killing things for trank arrows. But then literally out of nowhere, the pack leader just ordered all of the hyenas to eat Carl. Carl became a sandwich. So Carl decided to cut his losses, and he spawned in the South 2 zone to try to tame a Moschops. But then the simulation crashed. It was kind of a good thing though, because this unlocked Carl's time travel ability, and now he had his slingshot again. Well, at least for a few seconds. Anyway, Carl found a golden opportunity, and he saw a baby horse. All he had to do was kill the mother. That is an insane thing to say, by the way. If he raised these babies as his own, he would have a tame that doesn't require a saddle and can knock things out. There literally couldn't be a more perfect tame for this challenge. Unfortunately though, this horse's IQ level was about 4-fold that of Carl's, and he kept going into the water to extinguish the flame. When Carl made it back, the horse then kicked him out of consciousness and showed no mercy. And then he died about 15 more times in the process. But after an entire day of trying, Carl finally made it back to the horse, and the babies were grown up. So he decided to try and passive tame one of them, but it required him being a higher level. One dinosaur that doesn't actually require you to be a higher level to passive tame is a Moschops. And Moschops also don't require you to make a saddle, which is pretty important considering Carl doesn't know how to make, well, anything. And they're actually fairly strong as long as they're being ridden. So Carl's new plan is to find and tame one. But first he would have to figure out how to get out of this log that he got himself stuck in. Alright, let's find ourselves a Moschops. But after an entire day of putting in the hard work, Carl finally found a moss chops with a reasonable appetite. So he put some mailberries in his hot bar, he shoved them in the dude's mouth, and he ate them all in one bite. And I guess now would be a pretty good time to mention the way that I made it where I can't get XP but the dinos still can is I went into my game INI file and I put in this line for level experience ramp override and I just set it where to get to level 2 I need 2 billion XP. Sorry, Carl. And as you can see here, it's like such a high number that the cap for XP doesn't even exist. So yeah, if you ever want to play as Carl, there you go. And after a few hours on the simulation, Carl finally had a moss chops, and pretty much nothing else. But luckily for Carl, moss chops are actually really strong, at least for the early game, and so now his objective was to kill things for trank arrows and a crossbow. That way he could tame something bigger. And eventually Carl found himself at the swamp, which is probably not the most ideal location, but there was a lot of stuff here that can drop trank arrows. But Carl didn't last very long in the swamp because after like 2 kills, he turned left and there was a massive mosquito just chilling in the swamp. So Carl turned around and tried to run to his mother, but eventually he found himself in the redwoods where out of nowhere, 2 sociopaths came by, did a 360, and then forced Carl to touch grass. So there Carl was, stun locked on the ground, just watching this microraptor bite his kneecap. Poor Carl. Normally, you could just like tank their little weak hits and then get back on the moss chops, but with no armor and 100 health, basically anything is a death sentence in this run. Also, if you're wondering why the moss chops didn't just kill the microraptor, the dudes will not help. They will literally just run away. Anyway, the goal now is to head north so we could get to Carnal Island and Carl could kill a bunch of carnivores to collect some trank arrows. But for some reason, instead of going around like a intelligent being, Carl decided to walk straight through the home of the sociopath. And despite his best efforts to avoid being stun locked by these things, let's just say Carl was not having the best day. And you're not seeing this, but Carl actually respawned about 5 times, trying to get a better spawn point at West Zone 3, but every single time he just got put on the southwest part of the map. So he gave up and decided to run 1,200 meters. And after a solid 20 minutes of running, he did almost make it there, and he almost made it there again, and again, and again. But then he got lucky, and he finally found a moss chops that wasn't pickier than Gordon Ramsay. So he fed the dude a berry. It was a very, very satiating berry, by the way. And everything was going great until a terror bird attacked him, and then the entire continent of Pangea jumped him at the same time. Casually just tamed a Pego, by the way. And honestly, this wouldn't have been a big deal if Dimorphodon didn't just fly right in front of my bite and then get mad that I bit him. Also, wildcard, why is there like 800 Dimorphs right there? Anyway, Carl went 1,200 meters and went swimming without water. And it's literally day 8 now, but Carl finally made it back to his moss chops, and he started to head north for Carno Island. The next video I'm working on is called 100 Players Simulate Prison in ARK. And if you want to help me record for that video, I'll be putting applications out in my Discord server, link in the description. This event is going to be massive, and I can't wait for you guys to see it. Also, these videos take hundreds of hours to make, so if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. It allows me to make these more often, and I appreciate every single one. And then Carl committed a war crime and slayed this baby trike's mother. That part wasn't the crime though, it's what he named the poor dude. Carl vowed to protect Trike Wazowski with his life. But even though he was able to protect him from the degenerates of the world, Trike Wazowski perished. Because Carl forgot to feed him. Carl spent the rest of day 8 heading north. And on day 9, he almost became a grilled cheese sandwich, but luckily the Alpha Raptor was only level 10, and it dropped an apprentice crossbow, which is exactly what Carl needed to start taming better dinos. El Chapo was super low health though, and if that raptor was any higher level, Carl would probably be spawning on the South Beach right now. Anyways, Carl decided to adopt this baby Dilo. Carl is not a very good parent. Nope. And everything was going pretty well until El Chapo ran out of stamina, and then this happened. Yeah, El Chapo was sent to the Shadow Realm, but luckily Carl had made it to the North Spawn Zone, and now he could easily get his body back. Or maybe not. He gave it his best attempt, but Carl is level 1 in jumping too. So I rebooted ARK Survival Evolved, and after making his way back to the river, Carl got a part-time job as a lifeguard, and he managed to get his stuff back. That crossbow is really hard to come by in this challenge since there's no supply drops, so Carl really needs to be careful not to lose it. Carl got a bit distracted and got caught lacking by this gang member. But after a couple of marathons, he eventually got his crossbow back. Seriously? On day 10, Carl looted the aftermath of some Rexes, and he found some designer cargo pants. Carl is now civilized. And then after... well, pretend you didn't see that. Carl found a poor orphan in the wild, and he decided to claim the child as his own since its parents decided to abandon it. He gathered some berries to feed the little guy, and he protected his child from the escaped convicts of the world. He was so thoughtful that he even decided to tame a friend for his new Patchy. Okay, I lied. Carl doesn't actually understand friendship. He just needed to use them as storage boxes since his brain is a bit limited. But now he can freely explore without having to worry about losing his crossbow and arrows. So after challenging this bodybuilder to a duel, Carl spawned on the other side of the map to find a brand new El Chapo. After witnessing an entire civilization get wiped out by one singular degenerate, Carl stumbled upon another Moss Chops, and this one only wanted Tinto berries. He still needed to find a female to be able to breed little mini El Chapos, but he did manage to find another that wanted Tinto berries, so he named him Chopstick. But then Carl's Chopstick got smashed in the head by an Argy, but it's almost impossible to hit fires with the Moss Chops. Carl was definitely not having a great time fighting this guy. But eventually, Carl, Chopstick, and El Chapo Jr. sent that man sliding into the ocean's DMs, apparently. The next Moss Chops he found wanted some shrooms, which Carl did not possess, so he started heading back to his penthouse. But then on the way home, they got detained by a clan of hungry hyenas. And they all kind of just stood there in a single file line. I've never seen this happen before. But anyway, Chopstick 1v1'd their leader. But then, unfortunately, Chopstick got murdered in broad daylight, and El Chapo was barely able to escape by using the water as a shield. That was close. It's been 11 entire days, and the only thing that Carl has to show for it is 2 organic storage boxes with some cloth armor and a crossbow, 1 El Chapo, and 3 deceased choplets. I don't know if he's going to be able to pull this off in 100 days, but he definitely wasn't giving up. So on day 12, now that Carl had El Chapo Jr. back and a somewhat reliable method of killing stuff, the next step was to tame something that was a little bit better so he could take down Mama Brood, Papa Pithecus, and Doug. But before he would be able to knock anything out, he was going to need some trank arrows. Carl isn't afraid of anything, so he set straight out for the most dangerous part of the map, Carno Island. El Chapo is not the best swimmer, and everything caught up to him, but luckily he was able to assert his dominance over the entire population of Bikini Bottom, and he managed to find himself a cloth shirt. Oh, now I'm fully clothed. The reason Carl wanted to come to this island specifically is because carnivores have the best chance of dropping loot, and since he can't craft trank arrows, well, this is the only method that he's got. So after proving that we live in a simulation, Carl convinced El Chapo that he was Michael Phelps, and they safely made it back across the ocean. They also found this low-level female Moss Chops on the way, so when they made it home, he forced El Chapo to work some overtime and extorted about 12 eggs in a row from the poor chop. But despite Carl's questionable ethics, he no longer needed to worry about having backup Moss Chops. On day 14, Carl wanted a break from the trank arrow grind, so he decided that it was time to start working on some artifacts. To enter the fight with Mama Brood, he would need to conquer 3 different caves and bring back all 3 artifacts. And since it was the closest to him, he decided to start with the lava cave for the artifact of the massive. Carl and El Chapo slowly entered the lava cave, and as they went deeper, it started getting kind of hot. The first section was filled with a bunch of spiders and spiders with wings. There were so many that El Chapo was already down to half health. It wasn't looking good. So Carl shoved about 357 slices of raw mortal enemy right down El Chapo's throat to heal him, and then they continued on, slaying miscreants and healing by eating them. But then Carl realized, wait, Moss Chops can't jump. So due to El Chapo's shortcomings, they could no longer continue, at least not together. So Carl let El Chapo hold on to his things while he continued ahead, naked and afraid. He almost got swallowed by a giant spider, but he did manage to make it to the next area. Carl is no longer with us. That wasn't exactly Carl's intention. He wanted to kite them away from the path. But anyways, when Carl headed back into the cave, El Chapo was gone. Carl's best friend had abandoned him. So what happened was the Moss Chops fell under the map. I completely forgot that that was a thing because I was on a Nitrado server in my last video. But yeah, it's still not fixed. So yeah, you can't walk 15 feet away from a tame inside a cave on this game without them falling under the map. But it didn't really matter because Carl needed to tame something that can jump. But since he was already here, he decided to give it another shot. He got deleted. Good times. Back at base, Carl tried to incapacitate this fine gentleman that was being detained by his organic storage boxes. But Carl's not very strong, and since he only has 100 health, he broke his arm before knocking the dude out. How are you not unconscious right now? Carl low-key gives off some serial killer vibes. He ran away, but he did manage to tame El Chapo Jr., and he found a baby trike that had been abandoned by its mother. He then tried to go for a swim to lose some more trank arrows from his aquatic neighbors, but he almost became a fish taco. And after some involuntary eating, Carl slayed this hyena and got excited over one trank arrow. Oh, nice. Anyways, they farmed some more trank arrows from the local carnivores, and then he set out to the snow to tame a direwolf. The reason Carl wanted a direwolf is because they're fairly strong, they don't need a saddle, and more importantly, they can jump. Unlike some people. And after searching for most of day 16, Carl found a 125 direwolf. Bro, get off me. After like 15 shots, the direwolf managed to get unstuck and ran away. The Moss Chops was a lot slower, but luckily after wandering around for a minute, Carl heard some snoring. And then he found the dude in the nearby forest, blacked out on the floor. So he gently placed some prime meat in that man's pocket. And on day 17, Carl had a new best friend named Sleepy. So the trio headed back to their penthouse to drop off shark bait, and Carl and Sleepy headed back to the lava cave. Direwolves are so much faster than Moss Chops. When they made it inside, Carl noticed that the residents were all on a business trip. The only thing that was respawned was this family of Dilos. Sleepy made this cave pretty easy and managed to clear out all the different branches of sociopathy. Is that a word? And now, despite being pretty small himself, Carl had the artifact of the massive. Only 2 more to go to take down the broodmother. But Carl didn't stop there, although he probably should have. But while he was out, he headed straight for the lower south cave. How are you still alive? To get the artifact of the hunter. This cave is super easy. It's probably the easiest cave on this map. So Carl decided to take the scenic route and deleted every single resident in the cave. He was hoping to farm some trank arrows along the way. So after eviscerating some fecal connoisseurs, the way out actually had a bunch of Arthros that wanted to declothe Carl. And Sleepy's health was getting to a pretty scary level at one point. Not really sure why that part was so much harder than the rest of the cave, but overall, it went pretty smooth. And now it should be time to go home, but Carl must have woke up on the fearless side of the bed this morning because he went straight to the central cave for the artifact of the clever. This was definitely not the smartest play for Carl. He still had the other 2 artifacts in his inventory, so if he died, he was gonna lose those. And approximately 24.7 seconds after his arrival, there was somewhere around 69,000 degenerates in there, and Sleepy was about to enter the afterlife. And to make matters worse, Carl had contracted the highly contagious mega rabies. So he turned around and he quickly tried to social distance himself from the locals, but Carl is level 1, and his immune system is as well. With 100 health, Mega Rabies is essentially a death sentence for Carl. So Carl respawned about 3 light years away, and then like 20 minutes later, after traversing an entire planet, Carl finally made it back to his body. Well, that was fun. Let's play a different game now. Anyways, 30 minutes later, Carl got his stuff back, and due to his brain still being level 1, he decided to go back into the cave. Luckily, he didn't contract any more rabies-related viruses, and after taking it slow, by taking it slow, I mean like Carl was in here for an entire day shoving raw giant desert centipede into Sleepy's esophagus, he eventually made it to the artifact. On the way home, Carl managed to get a pretty decent hide shirt from this Alpha Raptor. And yeah, Carl had all 3 artifacts to fight Mama Brood. But with no real storage boxes, he couldn't get the artifacts of his inventory because artifacts can't be carried by tames in this game. But every few years or so, Carl's level 1 brain comes up with a good idea. And this was one of those times, because Carl decided to bring all of the artifacts to the Green Op. This is where he was going to fight the Broodmother anyway, so it was a pretty good idea. But then on the way home, Carl got assaulted by a micro hooligan, and Sleepy just stood there pretending not to notice while Carl's left foot got absolutely destroyed by that man. It took you long enough. But then after almost perishing via heart attack, oh no! Carl came back to Sharkbait running for his life after the storage box got murdered by a Carno. But luckily, it seems that Trek Wazowski and his 16 gigabytes of RAM seem to have neutralized the threat. And Alpha Rex was getting way too close to Carl's penthouse though, so he ran over and started biting the fine gentleman's ankles. Oh, can he not hit me? It was working pretty well until the Rex decided to actually try. Oh, he's hitting hard. He spent a while trying to kite the big fellow away from his house, but the Rex had the attention span of a toddler. Scratch that. The attention span of Carl when he was a toddler. But since he kept getting distracted, Carl had a lot of opportunities to get some hits in, and even though it took like all day, he slayed the giant and won a lifetime supply of prime meat. Well, if Carl's lifetime doesn't last more than 18 minutes, I guess. The rest of the loot was pretty bad. Anyways, it was day 22 now, and after Carl created and then proceeded to adopt this orphan, he had all 3 artifacts for the Broodmother and a bunch of random low-level tames that were totally not stolen from their parents. But it was now time for the hard part. He needed an army to take into the boss fight. The other artifacts are going to be significantly harder and potentially impossible at level 1, but Carl will worry about that later. For now, he needs to find something to tame. So he set out to Carno Island to get some tranks and find a solid male Rex to breed with the low-level female that he's holding hostage right now. Whoa, wait, what? Why is it so high? It seems that Carl has heat stroke and almost evaporated. Carl is still level 1 with no fortitude, so anywhere that isn't the beach causes a little bit of problems with the temperature. But luckily, Carl managed to survive by just chilling under the water until the sunset. So now that Carl was done beefing with the sun, he began his grind for trank arrows and looking for a high-level male Rex. What level are you? Carl can't make a spyglass, so checking levels is a bit sketchy. Oh, 145. But he actually did have enough arrows to tame this guy, so he quickly got some meat to heal up Sleepy, and he started shooting. It was honestly pretty easy since the Rex turned slower than a semi-truck with no tires. So now that the 145 Rex was down, Carl extorted his neighbor for some prime meat, and he didn't let the dude leave his sight until he was tamed. This Rex was a female, which is kind of unfortunate, but he had a bunch of low-level males that he raised during the mass extinction event. On the way home, Carl witnessed an image that he would never unsee. Okay. But when he made it back home, he started breeding Tyrannosaurus Flex with one of the low-level males, hoping to get stats onto a male baby. But the eggs were too hot, and Carl isn't smart enough to craft air conditioners, and he didn't know what to do. He could bring the eggs to the perfect temperature area, but there's got to be a better option than that, right? So Carl pondered on that for a moment, and then his level 1 brain had an idea. Dimetrodons. These guys are like organic air conditioners. If you stand or put eggs near them, they magically become the perfect temperature. I don't understand how it works either, but just go with it. So Carl made his way to the swamp to find one of these budget Spinos. And it really didn't take long before he found a level 25. But then a leech jumped out the swamp to borrow some of Carl's level 1 blood. Seriously? Anyways, Carl and his brand new leech managed to knock out 2 different Dimetrodons. But Dimetrodons actually wake up really fast, and Carl was not prepared. Carl scrambled to quickly collect some narco berries, and it was enough to convince one of them to be his friend. But he had to waste a bunch of tranks to knock the other one out again because it woke up. Carl's primitive brain can't comprehend the idea of a thatched foundation, so there was no possible way he was making cryopods. It took a while, but eventually Carl had 2 friends. Wait, do I actually have to walk them all the way across the map? And these dudes have got to be like top 5 slowest creatures in this entire game, right behind snails and trees. Well, that was a great use of 30 minutes. 700 insulation? I guess I probably only needed one of these guys. On day 28, Carl finally started incubating his Rexes, and he started training them young. So there's this dude named Doug. Carl waited anxiously for the Rexes to hatch, but they were all pretty bad. But ironically, there was one Rex, the lowest level of them all, and it somehow happened to get the good health and melee. And it was a male. Carl was very excited. We got our breeding pair. So Carl escorted the VIP child away from the group. And then Carl, well, yeah, Carl's a bit of a menace to society. Oh, triplets with the good health and the melee. It seems that karma doesn't apply to Carl, but he still had to wait on the 4 good Rexes to raise, so he decided to head out. There wasn't too much he could do since he can't craft anything, so he decided to get a head start on the artifacts to fight Papapithecus, starting with Carno Island Cave for the artifact of the Devourer. I'm not gonna lie, this cave looks amazing on this game. Did Sleepy just defecate while swimming? This cave is normally one of the easiest ones on the map, but in this challenge, Mega Rabies is basically the death penalty for Carl, and there's a whole lot of bats in here. So Carl jumps straight in without an ounce of fear in his body. Carl is going to die. Well, that could have went better. What do you want? Oh, Carl found a level 5 Moss Chops, so he borrowed it to go back to Carno Island. But the poor guy ran out of stamina halfway there, and Carl just left him to drown. Imagine drowning. Luckily, he made it just outside the render area of the cave entrance, so Sleepy didn't fall onto the map, but Carl's body did. So he lost his armor and his good crossbow, but with Sleepy being alive, honestly, that's the best case scenario. He tried to take it slow with literally nothing in his inventory. And he managed to make it all the way down to the bottom, but there was a whole clan of Mega Rabies advocates just waiting to be contagious, and Carl just went for it. He stuck to the side wall, and a few of them did aggro, but for the most part, they just didn't care about Carl. Kinda sums up his whole life. But Carl finally made it back to his oceanfront mansion. He noticed that one of the baby Rexes was starving. He panicked for a second, but he reacted quickly and he fed the little guy some of his siblings that didn't mutate. I just realized that Carl is never going to be able to make a feeding trough. That's gonna be pretty annoying. Anyways, Carl farmed some meat from the aftermath of the Revolutionary War, and then he grabbed his other crossbow and some tools before heading out to store the artifact. 193? That is insane. Carl is kind of balling out right now. Well, you know, for someone level 1 anyways. The Rexes are still raising though, so the only logical thing to do while waiting was to prepare for the next cave. But this cave is underwater and Carl is level 1 and breathing. He also can't craft any scuba because his brain can't comprehend what that means. So for a level 1 challenge, the run is basically over right here. Well, it would be if it wasn't for one specific dino in this game, the Diplocolus. These guys will allow Carl to breathe from their... I don't know, he's gonna get some air though. Basically, you use their oxygen instead of yours, and you try not to think about how disgusting that is. So Carl made it to the swamp, and he searched some more, and he almost perished. And then he continued his search. He wasn't very happy with any of the levels of the Diplocolus in the entire swamp, which is pretty hypocritical considering this is the dude saying they're terrible. But anyways, after looking for a solid 20 minutes, Carl decided to settle for this level 45. As long as the oxygen, the stamina, and the movement speed can be pumped a little bit, it should be fine, at least for this specific underwater cave. So that's the story of how Carl acquired an inhaler. These things are almost as slow as the organic air conditioners, but luckily they're a bit faster in the water, so Carl started swimming. But then this happened. Okay, water bad. I think I'm gonna take a break from this game. On day 31, Carl finally managed to tame a Diplocolus. It was only a level 45, but I'm assuming they just get spawn trapped every time since Carl couldn't find any. The swamp is death. Anyways, after a 15-minute walk back to his base, Carl grabbed some eggs and hatched a bunch of cute little moss chops babies. Okay, yeah, never mind. I don't know what you expected from Carl. So after leveling up Robert a good amount, Carl rearranged the Rex breeders to get 4 eggs at a time. But it was time to get some boss Rexes going so Carl could take down the first boss. Carl leveled some of the older Rex's health so they could begin healing while he was out, and after grabbing his best armor set to hopefully not freeze to death, he hopped on his amphibious Uber, setting out for the underwater cave to get the next artifact for the monkey fight. Also, you might have noticed that Carl had to raise over 30 Rexes because he doesn't have cryopods to change what they want for imprint, but he did manage to get 20 imprinted Rexes. Anyways, it took like half of a day, but Carl eventually arrived directly above his worst nightmare. But as soon as he started swimming down, Carl's brain self-destructed. And after booting back up, Carl had time traveled back to his humble abode, so he started heading back over again and stopped to grab this red drop on the way. But then he remembered that he's a bit inferior. Bro is built like melted ice cream. From this point in the challenge, you might notice a significant graphical improvement, and also the weird lighting glitches are fixed. I figured out how to remove fog, so yeah. But anyways, Carl finally made it back, and he docked his organic oxygen tank above the cave to regain some stamina. And then he started descending into the depths. But then the simulation crashed again. Yeah, I fixed the graphics, but not the crashes, apparently. Okay, Carl's above the cave again. By the way, this is the difference before and after removing fog. It's kind of insane. Anyways, Carl made it into the cave this time, being fully sustained with the 2700 oxygen from Robert's, we'll go with gills. Robert is super fast, but he has really low health. So if Carl gets hit by an eel and stunned, it's game over. Wait, is this the wrong cave? So Carl accidentally went to the super hard underwater cave that has the artifact of the cunning, the one to take down the dragon. He was considering turning around, but the monkey artifact cave is all the way over there, and he's already here. So despite being severely underprepared, Carl was feeling brave today, and he started heading down into the tunnel with some horrendous vertical movement speed. There was a Megalocop in pursuit, but they're super slow, so Carl was mainly just concerned with the eels. Although this tunnel is extremely tight, and he might get trapped inside. He catted out a couple sharks in the entrance, and he went a little bit deeper. Why is there so many? Carl was surrounded by megalodons that smelled his level 1 blood. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 sharks, bro! And after he cutted them all out of the back part, he headed back into the final cavern. There were some more anglers and piranhas that Carl had to kite out, but there were still no eels. It was pretty sketchy, and I don't know how Carl's still alive, to be honest, but he managed to grab the artifact and swam past about 18 sociodons to make it out of the tunnel. But let's be honest, Carl didn't really do anything. Robert did 112% of the work in there, and after making it past the entrance eels and giving a quick save because of that, Carl had successfully, accidentally, retrieved the artifact of the cunning. That's like the 3rd hardest artifact on this map, one of the hardest ones in the entire game, and I was pretty scared about that one, to be honest, so at least now I don't have to worry about that. But the snow cave and the swamp cave, yeah, we might fail this challenge. I have an idea, but there's probably some type of -% chance that it works. Anyways, Carl went back to grab Sleepy, and then he dropped the artifact off at the green obelisk. So now he has all 3 artifacts for Mama Brood, 1 for Papa Pithecus, and 1 for Doug. Carl's doing pretty good, actually. And back at base, the Rexes were almost done raising, and he was about to have 20 imprinted Rexes and several unimprinted Rexes. He really wanted to try and tame a Yudi because they give a damage boost and a damage reduction to everyone when they roar, but they require an insane amount of trinks. But trying to knock one of those out without a trap sounds incredibly painful. Carl moved all the imprinted Rexes to a clear area to make it easier to level them up, but then the Spino that Carl bought from Wish got eviscerated by a wild degenerate. Oh no! Carl panicked. There was nothing with saddles, and he didn't know what to do. And then all 4 of the nation's militaries nuked that man simultaneously, and Carl smiled as the raptor entered the Shadow Realm. That was insane. There's only 1 organic air conditioner left though, and Carl didn't really want to walk another one halfway across the map. He led the Rexes over while chopping on some raw meat, because he's not civilized enough to make a campfire. That would require level 2. But now the 20 imprinted Rexes were ready to level. I actually started recording this video in January, but I had to pause the challenge to work on some other stuff. But now that I'm back and 3 months have passed, they added all the new cowboy skins with Bob's Tall Tales, and Carl has no use for hide, or for anything, really. So he decided to channel his inner Arthur Morgan. I actually had the idea to use the Bob's Tall Tales engrams because I thought that they were all level 1, but it turns out they're not. At level 1, you only get the cowboy skins and the Western structure skins for Carl's non-existent saloon.
A few moments later.
Okay, I had my recording paused again. I don't know why, but this keeps happening like once a video. It's probably Carl's fault somehow. Anyways, what happened was, Carl set up all these breeders over here, all level 134, so he can easily see mutations without having to claim them. And he's breeding a bunch of other random ones over here just to speed up the leveling a little bit. While he was setting all that up, Carl kept getting assaulted by waves of serial killers, and one of them came running up like this, and the serial killer proceeded to delete the female mouse chops, and then ran past every single other creature and went straight towards Robert, sent him directly to the Shadow Realm. And then Carl was all like, whoa. And then Carl finally managed to disassemble the raptor, and he was laying there like... So Carl was victorious, which made him very happy. But then a random seagull started bullying him, and he's also dying of heat stroke right now. He also forgot to unpause his recording, and Robert is now in the afterlife. So Carl isn't that happy. But anyways, these eggs are finally beginning to hatch. So Carl put the first Rex on neutral and encouraged him to engage in combat with this group of children. But bro was refusing, so Carl put him on aggressive. And then that man started going hog wild. Baby Rexes are flying everywhere. But the Rex is kind of, I don't know what's wrong with him, but the dude was really struggling. When the next contestant stepped up to the plate, he slowly picked off the little guys one by one, until Carl led him across the beach to finish off the runners. I think Carl invented the worst government structure possible. But then Carl's tribe was under attack, so he rushed over to find this raptor going Ooh ha ha all over shark bait. It's interesting that the tames still drop essence when they die, even though there's not oasisaurs on this map. After that distraction, Carl collected some more eggs and stashed them for the winter. Carl's knees look like they're about to go extinct. Carl does really need to level the rest of these guys, but we just got done with the breeding montage. So Carl decided that first he would tame a new Diplocaulus after that tragedy fell upon Robert. But before he left, Carl went AFK because someone on the other side of the screen was texting his friend, and storage box got deleted by the pelican that was bullying Carl earlier. So Carl arrived as the first responder, and he found this random RG just absolutely wreaking havoc to his society. He couldn't ride anything except for the moss chops since he has no saddles, and the moss chops can't hit the RG for some reason. So Carl takes it into his own level 1 hands. Carl perished. But luckily, he made it back with Sleepy to stop the apocalypse. And then he grabbed his crossbow and hit the most satisfying shot of all time. I absolutely hate those things. He grabbed his good crossbow and some trank arrows and headed out to the swamp to find a new Robert. On day 40, Carl finally made his arrival, and this racer defied the laws of physics. Carl searched for a while, like a really, really long while, but he couldn't find a single Diplo over the level of 15. So he used Sleepy to trap the amphibian against this tree and sent 2 melatonin lace arrows directly into that man's dome. And then Sleepy fought this bug and accidentally bit an entire tree off of its stump. Anyways, while the level 15 was taming, Carl kept looking for another Diplo, and then he got kidnapped by the locals. That was close, but Carl's still alive. Never mind, Carl's dead. Sleepy's on neutral though, so everything was fine. And when Carl made it back, he named his new inhaler and removed this random leech from Sleepy's elbow. They took it really slow as Carl searched for a better Diplocaulus while keeping Inhaler close to protect him. Oh, 120. But then Carl's business meeting was interrupted by this Sarco, and then even worse, the game crashed. So once again, Carl unlocked his time travel ability and started searching for another Diplo. That 120 wasn't there anymore. So once again, he started searching for another Diplo. Carl searched in the water, the grass, the rocks, the bushes, the lily pads, the trees, the sky. These dudes don't exist. Carl was depression. He decided to start heading back, but then a berry came out the woodworks, ran straight past Carl, and straight for his inhaler. That was close. But now it was time for Carl to slowly walk his new inhaler halfway across the map. And I guess now is a good time to talk about the strategy. Carl does have a plan for most of the caves, even the snow cave, which is nearly impossible due to the cold. But he actually has no idea what to do for the swamp cave to combat the poison. There's a couple different things that he's gonna try, but to be honest, it probably won't work, so that part will definitely be interesting. Dude, ARK Ascended's pathfinding is so bad. Let's just run into a wall. When Carl made it back to the base, the day was already coming to a close. So he left Sleepy on neutral next to his inhaler to protect him from the haters, and now it was about time to start leveling up the Rexes. Why won't they mate? Yeah, the game was glitched apparently, and nothing was able to mate. I'm not really sure what was going on, but my game did crash like 3 times while trying to load in earlier. I really think the level 1 code is making the game unstable or something. Maybe 2 billion XP is too high. I don't know, but the Rexes all had a couple levels each, so Carl went ahead and leveled their health so they could start healing. Carl really needed to figure out why these Rexes wouldn't breed, but he did already have a bunch of eggs hoarded from earlier, so he started transporting them. 4 at a time because Carl's a bit of a weakling. And then he decided to continue the Boston Massacre. He let each Rex get about 4 eggs, and that gave each one about 35 levels. And Carl just basically repeated this horrific process until his horde of eggs was gone. So Carl had to pause his egg scrambling to go steamroll a miscreant. There were supposed to be Rexes on neutral, but they're all back on passive now, so he switched them to ignore group whistles, and hopefully this won't happen anymore, but everything just keeps dying. Anyways, Carl continued his morning routine. Yeah, he probably deserved that. The game crashed again while loading in, but when Carl got back in, he had traveled back in time to before any of the Rexes were leveled. Which is super annoying, but at least Sharkbait was alive again, even though he's kinda useless now. Anyways, Carl finally got back to work.
If I do it once, I do it again. Add it up, bankroll, euro, peso, add it up, I'm just doing me, everything is on me, oh you matter what, add it up, bankroll, euro.
Maybe the Rexes won't breed because they realize what Carl's gonna do with the eggs. Anyways, there wasn't any health or melee mutations, but the majority of them are leveled now, and Carl's also out of eggs. I went back to the main menu, and look, all I did was just look through the settings for like 20 minutes trying to figure out what was wrong, and I couldn't find anything, so I didn't do anything. I just left it all how it was. But when the game loaded back up, Carl was able to breed the Rexes once again. Yeah, this game has some issues. Anyways, there's still more Rexes to be leveled, and Carl still has no moral compass. So yeah, mass production, mass murder, whatever you want to call it.
Add it up, bankroll, euro, peso, add it up. I'm just doing me, everything is on me. Oh, you matter what?
So about halfway through day 43, Carl finally finished evicting hundreds of young residents, and he had roughly 22 Rexes leveled up. There's also a bunch of backup eggs in the air conditioner because fighting Doug requires a different strategy with lower health Rexes, but we'll talk a little bit more about that later. The Rexes still have a lot of healing to do for now, so Carl decided to continue conquering the caves for the artifacts to fight Papa Pithecus. That's Harambe's grandfather, by the way. Also, my game literally has been crashing like 1 to 2 times every single time I restart my computer, and I have a 4090. I don't know what more they want from me. Anyways, Carl was kind of scared of the underwater cave because eels. So he grabbed his weaker crossbow and his best armor, including some chitin and hide pieces. And after defending his honor from Tyrannosaurus Flex's evil cousin, he set out for the Upper South Cave for the artifact of the pack. The journey went pretty smooth until some triplets tried to steal Carl's level 1 life, but luckily Sleepy reacted quickly and Carl lived on to see another level 1 day. On day 44, Carl finally made it to the cave. He was pretty worried about this one because with 100 health and some potential cold related issues, Carl could easily lose his only level. And if Carl passes away, there's a 113% chance that Sleepy's gonna fall under the map because caves. He definitely should have gotten a breeding pair of wolves before risking Sleepy's life like this, but Carl's brain isn't very large. The first section of the cave inhabited a few snakes and 1 mega rabies advocate. Carl didn't have his vaccine, so he was terrified of catching mega rabies, and he had to be super careful. He sniped some of the viral connoisseurs from afar, and he thinned out the next area before engaging. And since Sleepy is OP, he cleared the rest pretty easily. He was pretty much dropping everything he looted because he doesn't need resources, he just wants more trank arrows. Oh no, Sleepy's too fat. Oh, never mind, he sucked it in for a second. There's probably a ton of bats in this bottom area, so Carl was being very cautious, but it turns out the cave just had several million snakes and not really anything else. Why are there so many titanoboas? I've never seen this cave like this before. Usually it's mainly bats and spiders, but this time it was basically Snake Island. Anyway, Carl proceeded to accidentally yeet himself off this cliff, but he managed to survive and skipped an entire area, and he pretended that it was intentional. There's like unlimited snakes in here right now. There's a few bats, but not many. I'm definitely not complaining, but it was really weird. Also, as he slowly made his way through these ruins, he managed to get a few explorer notes to level up Sleepy. Oh, this area has the whole mafia. Oh, there's the aquatic mafia. He managed to execute some creeps and was left with this 140 Arthro that was trying to expose Carl by disintegrating his cloth pants. But he managed to live on for another day, and more importantly, he still had pants. But now it was time for the water, and this is where it gets complicated. Not only are there Sarcos that can potentially dismount and 73 piranhas trying to consume Carl's singular level, but the water heater is broken in here. Carl lost 20% of his health within 10 seconds of submerging his big toe in the water. Carl was becoming a snow cone. He tried to jump up onto this part and use the exit shortcut with Sleepy, but since he can't make grapples or anything like that, it wasn't working out too well. But he kept trying, and he went from every angle, dismounting in different spots. He got so close a few times, but Carl was not able to skip the water. So he began to ponder on what he should do. But then all of a sudden a Sarco leaped out of the water and caught an attempted murder charge. And then since his health was so low to begin with, he almost experienced a very cold death trying to make it back to the land. And at this point, there was nothing he could really do besides just sit here and wait to heal, because he really needed to be full health to try and swim down each section, especially because his highly nutritious diet of raw Titanoboa was causing severe complications with Carl's level 1 immune system. So after chilling in a cave, Carl was finally at full health, and he went all in. He tried to go as fast as possible, but if Sleepy's swimming was any slower, he'd be going backwards. And the piranhas brought their entire extended family to munch on his thighs, so it's gonna be close. Carl got deleted. There wasn't any spawn points even close to being near the cave, so Carl couldn't go back even if he wanted to. And he already expected Sleepy to be long gone under the map by now with no backup direwolves. But at least he still had sharkbait. So Carl decided to find a good breeding pair of direwolves with sharkbait's assistance, of course. He really wanted to go back and get the chitin armor that he just lost, but until he finds a solution for the cold, all his stuff is most likely gone. Anyways, on day 45, they continued their search for a direwolf, but unfortunately, all of the wolves seemed to be on vacation. They did find an alpha carno though, which got sharkbait down to half health and distracted Carl long enough for him to be dying from frostbite. He realized that he had to be super careful to stay near the border of the snow where he wouldn't freeze to death. This really limited the chances of finding wolves because they don't actually spawn on the border, but eventually they found a pack. Sharkbait was still low health, and Carl didn't have a spyglass to check their levels. Oh, they see me. And since he didn't know which one was the best, he just introduced them all to the afterlife, keeping this last one alive, hoping that it was halfway decent. But then when he went to knock it out, a Daedon started gnawing on Sharkbait. Sorry, buddy. This was super sketchy, but eventually the direwolf started running, and Carl sniped him with pinpoint accuracy. Sharkbait has 1k health left and an arrow lodged in the back of his forehead, but the direwolf was down. Level 60 is definitely not great, but it's still much better than Carl. It's fine though, because this one's likely just gonna be for breeding, and Carl can find a higher level female anyway. My shops are so slow, bro. After making it back to his base, Carl decided to level the wolf's health a bit. And then he fed him his extended family that just got dismantled about 10 minutes ago.
You what?
But after the wolf's health was full, they set back out for the snow to find a high-level female. It kind of sucks that Carl had to stay on the border because it made it significantly less likely that he'd find anything. But he can't last more than 20 seconds if he walks 4 foot to his right, so this is all we've got. Would have been nice if he would have just not brought Sleepy into the cave. Anyways, after traversing halfway across the map, Carl finally saw some wolves beefing with this mammoth, so he slayed all but one. 25 male. And then Carl almost got sauteed by this hash-slinging slasher. Good times. He really wasn't finding much, and when he did find some, they were usually participating in the Civil War. But about halfway through day 46, Carl finally found what he was looking for. 140 female. So Carl started shooting, and bro was going all berserk, acting all big and bad, until Carl put a few trank arrows in his frontal lobe, and he started running away, only to fall asleep. I really want this one to be good, man. So Carl borrowed some prime meat from this generous aloe for maximum efficiency. Almost froze to death from the 10 seconds that took, by the way. And after like 5 minutes, this fine gentleman was tamed. Or gentlewoman, I guess. Carl named her Frostbite because that's what he almost died from while taming her. This challenge is really interesting because it's significantly more difficult to get anything than the 0 times challenge with no drops or crafting. But on level 1, you can still farm meat and berries, which makes breeding and boss fights easier, so I'm not sure which is technically harder overall. Anyways, Carl decided to breed Frostbite with Sleepy Jr. to get a couple good stat backups before heading back into the cave. And Frostbite actually looks really cool. She's black and white, and the name fits perfectly, which is kind of ironic since the name wasn't even based off her at all. It was based off of Carl's shortcomings. Baby barely made it out. Like the complete opposite of Harambe. Oh my god. The first baby had all of the bad stats, so Carl continued breeding but got interrupted by some Rex on Rex crime. And after a couple more, Carl finally got a baby with the good stats. So now that he had a guaranteed way to breed more, he put on all his highest cold resist armor and some hide boots to toast his toes. Bro, why is there an Ovis here? And after remembering that he actually does have the capability of crafting like 2 items, he decided to take Frostbite back to the cave. You know, that cave from earlier with Carl's deceased body in it. When Carl saw some salmon on the way, it reminded him that he actually could technically get a fishing rod. All he'd have to do is the very, very simple task of killing an alpha squid. But even if he somehow managed to do that, he wouldn't be able to craft a chair, and Carl's brain isn't capable of fishing standing up for some reason. Wonder if you can fish from the back of a direwolf. I've never tried fishing from anything but a chair, so I really don't know the answer to that question, but Carl might be trying to figure this out soon. Anyways, after farming some meat and then healing up a little bit, he made his way through the cave back to the lake of his demise. And after taking a moment to gain his confidence and calculate the fastest possible route from point A to point B, Carl took a massive jump and swam as fast as possible. All he had to do was make it out the water and he would be safe. Oh, so close, man. That was super annoying because Frostbite's gonna fall under the map, so Carl reluctantly grabbed one of the low-level wolves, and he realized how much armor and crossbows he's went through. There's not much left, and it's really hard to get these things in this challenge. Carl has been way too reckless. He decided to go out and see if he could tame an otter because they give insulation based on their melee to keep you warm. I was pretty sure that the game won't let you tame them until you're a higher level like it does with a bunch of other passive tames, but at this point, Carl needed to try something, so he kayaked down the river, a very long ways down the river, and eventually, after waterboarding Sleepy Jr. for 15 minutes, it finally happened. And he's 105, nice. So Sleepy Jr. incapacitated a salmon, and Carl fed the little dude a fish that was 3 times the size of Carl's body. Oh, it let me tame him. Now I feel like an idiot. So Carl, Sleepy Jr., and Fred headed back to base to get Fred some levels. On the way home, he found a purple drop and was once again reminded of his shortcomings. But when he finally made it back to base, he started incubating a few baby Rexes to level Fred because Otter's insulation scales off their melee damage. And at this point, the eggs started hatching, so Carl claimed all the babies and put them on passive before unclaiming them again so they wouldn't run away. You know, if you just objectively think about what's happening right now, like outside the context of ARK, this scenario is, well, it's a lot of things. Anyways, Fred entered aggressive mode, but he didn't want to attack. Get him, buddy. He just looked Carl in the eyes and was like, "Sir, you want me to fight that?" So Carl reclaimed the Rexes and brought them away from his base so he could whistle attack target without everything going hog wild. It took a while, but Fred ate 700,000 calories that day. The last Rex started doing 360 no-scopes, but after Fred was finished, he had about 40 levels, which gave Carl over 1,000 insulation. That is huge. So now that he should be able to survive the cold water, he ran across the map for the 24th time. He was hesitant to try this again because he didn't want to lose Fred and Sleepy Jr. after Sleepy and Frostbite were both consumed to this cave along with his best gear. He knew he had to get the artifact one way or another though, and Fred was his best chance. As he swam down, Carl noticed that Fred's insulation was enough to keep him warm. Carl might not die today. His stuff definitely is despawned by now though, which is unfortunate. But he made his way through the cave, trying not to think about how he could have just done this from the start. Fred is going to be very useful for most of the caves in the cold areas of this challenge, but he's not a permanent solution because the snow cave is way too cold even for Fred. After wrangling some Sarcos and making it to the land, there was definitely still no shortage of snakes in here. I still don't understand what's up with that. But the lack of bats made it pretty easy for Carl and Fred to make it through to the artifact of the pack and escape jumping out the shortcut in the back. But then something very unfortunate happened. Sleepy Jr. is fat. Carl tried to jump from every angle possible, but it seems like the angle of the slope only allows the direwolves to jump in from one direction. And Carl's only level 1 in loyalty, so instead of trying to find another solution, he just abandoned the dude. But when Carl and Fred made it outside, they realized that they were stranded miles away from home. Carl's knees would probably reach fatality if they had to run that far, so he threw Fred onto this rock. And luckily, otters are the only tame in this entire game that can carry artifacts. That was pretty convenient. I really hope he doesn't die. So after grabbing a new wolf and making yet another trip across the entire map to retrieve Fred, Carl found him just chilling in this bush. Anyways, Carl finally made it back to base, and on day 51, the Rexes were mostly healed, and it was time for Carl's very first boss fight, Mama Brood. I guess Fred can come along too. So Carl whistled all the Rexes to follow, but before they could leave, I held Carl at gunpoint and forced him to name this direwolf and some of the Rexes after my Patreon and YouTube members. So now everybody was ready, so they all set out to the green obelisk. After testing their combat skills on their estranged cousin, they continued on their journey, devouring every living organism in their path. It took forever because Carl wanted to make sure that they weren't getting lost, but I'm like 90% sure Carl lost a couple Rexes on the way here. I don't know why I have that meme, but it was almost appropriate. One of the Rexes accidentally fell into the ocean, so Carl had to become a part-time lifeguard, but eventually he managed to get them all around the terminal. Well, kind of. Look, there's no saddles. The organization bothers me too, but what am I supposed to do, man? The direwolf still wasn't healed up yet though, so Carl spent a few minutes farming some meat to get his health up. Bro, where did you come from? If Carl dies, the fight fails, so him riding a good direwolf is the only option. Carl counted all of his Rexes, and he thinks there's 22, but it's kind of hard to keep track when we have Rex spaghetti over here. And now it was time for Carl to take on the broodmother. Oh wait, that could be a problem. Bro, she just got destroyed. Carl's direwolf got a bit messed up, but this is no saddles or gear, completely vanilla with no modifiers or anything, but single player settings are on and Rexes are pretty crazy. But still, without saddles or gear, the dragon and the overseer are going to be pretty insane challenges, and the caves are going to be even worse, if not impossible. So no matter what, at least we can say that Carl beat a boss. Anyways, it was day 53 now, and Carl had finally made it back to base. He left all the boss Rexes on the other side of the beach on neutral, ready to fight Papa Pithecus. But first, Carl needed to get the last artifact, which required him to take on the underwater cave. So he decided to breed the wolves for an extra backup. It wasn't really necessary, he was just procrastinating because he was scared. Was that a treasure map? The treasure was all the way over there. From my last video, I can confirm that the loot is kind of insane, but you do need a shovel for it, so unfortunately, Carl will not be doing any pirate-related activities today. So he claimed his new baby wolf and leveled up his inhaler, who was still pretty bad to be honest. Oh, I forgot about the flag. That's most likely the only structure Carl is ever going to lay his level 1 hands on. But then Carl realized something. He just beat a boss. That means he actually does have some engrams now. It's most likely impossible to get cooked metal in this challenge, but if somehow he can do that through fishing, Carl might be able to craft tech gear. Anyways, Carl was finished procrastinating and on his way to the dreaded hometown of eels. But Carl would probably become an ice Carl if he went that way.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
So he had to turn around and travel halfway across the galaxy, and then for some reason he stopped to grab some pearls on the way. Not really sure why he did that. But anyways, the cave is technically much easier than the other water cave that Carl did by accident earlier, but it has way more eels, which for this challenge specifically could make it really difficult. Mainly because Inhaler is very weak and relies on being fast, but one hit from an eel and then he's not fast. And if Inhaler's not fast, then Carl's not alive. So yeah, Carl parked above the cave to mentally prepare. Wait, where's the cave? Oh, there it is, right next to the 69 different species of eel. All the eels instantly came out to say hi, and Carl almost instantly died before entering the cave. So he had to stop and force feed to heal up a bit. It doesn't take very long when you can be deleted in one hit. This is definitely a bad idea, but Carl continued to swim down despite the entire electrical facility trying to recruit Carl. But then, as soon as he entered the cave, the game crashed. What? Okay, dude, my game just crashed, by the way. It also crashed like 4 more times while booting back up, but eventually he entered back into the simulation, and he managed to pull all the bodyguards away before slowly traversing through the loading zone. He wanted to make sure that it didn't crash again. Is that a Tuso? Swim, bro! He continued on cautiously because Squidward stayed near the entrance, and most of the eels seemed to be near the floor, so while sticking to the ceiling, he went mostly undetected. There were eels everywhere, but the artifact was pretty clear, and Carl stealth swam up. Stole it right from underneath their electric noses. There was an alpha megalodon, a bunch of electric menaces, and of course Squidward defending his honor. But Carl managed to get all the way out of there and swim away with the artifact in his level 1 pocket. When Carl victoriously made it back to base, he took his child on a walk, and then he headed back across the map to grab the other 2 artifacts that he was storing in the green ob. He left the artifact of the Cunning Dare because it needs to go to the red ob for Doug, but that'll happen later. And now he had everything that he needed to take on Papa Pithecus. And this walk across the map is getting insanely annoying. Bro, someone left their tree in the sky. But I guess Carl wasn't supposed to see that because a bunch of hitmen showed up out of nowhere and tried to erase Carl's memory. He actually almost died while riding the direwolf. Since when have fairies been able to just hit you off the back of stuff like that? Dude, this creep won't leave me alone. On the way home, Carl found one of those boss Rexes that he lost earlier stuck underneath a rock somehow. Poor guy broke his leg. When he made it back to his humble abode, Carl grabbed everything he needed to fight the Megapithecus. But unfortunately, he lost all of his hide armor and is pretty cold up there. So he decided to make a quick trip to Carno Island to find some alphas that might drop some hide armor. Carl didn't find any armor. Looks like Fred's gonna have to carry. So on day 55, Carl whistled follow all and he set out for the blue obelisk. Hopefully he doesn't freeze to death because he really doesn't have a backup plan, and once again, it's cold up there. But about 2 minutes into the road trip, Carl messed up pretty bad. He got stuck in this cove while half of his Rexes were still on top of the cliff. Really, man? It took him like 10 minutes to fix the problem, but after landscaping some rocks and rounding everyone up, they finally started back on their journey. Their very, very long journey. Seriously? So Carl had to backtrack to prevent the apocalypse. He 100% has these Rexes on neutral, like this shouldn't be happening. Anyways, now it was time to set out on their very, very long journey. Yeah, this might take a while. Jungle Tyrannosaurus, Murderous Tyrannosaurus, Lifesaver Tyrannosaurus, Stay Frosty Tyrannosaurus, Broken Pathfinding Tyrannosaurus. This is painful. There's definitely something wrong with the mesh in this area. They just keep going the wrong way even after Carl mined all of the rocks. Anyways, towards the end of day 56, they were finally at the base of the snow mountain. And after counting all of the Rexes, Carl came to the conclusion that he lost about 5 on the way here. But even though there's only 17 now instead of 22, only 18 could go anyways since he needed the direwolf and Fred. So missing out on 1 isn't really a huge deal, but it's pretty crazy that he lost that many in the first place. Anyways, Carl began to prepare for the fight. Oh, Carl almost died from stupidity. But after putting the artifacts in and waiting on his health to regen, it was time. Oh, he died in 30 seconds. I seem to be stuck. So yeah, that was pretty easy to be honest. This is why I don't usually use Rexes when I have saddles and actual gear. Bro is ascending right now. But even though that was easy, the dragon and the other caves are gonna be really tough. And if I have time, I might even see if Carl can take down some alpha bosses, but that might be asking too much. Anyway, as Carl headed back to base, some of the Rexes were already getting stuck. It's gonna be a long day for Carl. Carl only lost 1 Rex that time. Kinda bothers me that the flag snap points aren't level. But Mama Brood and Papa Pithecus have been defeated, and now Carl has his sights set on his mortal enemy, Doug. So he got some gear together, and he decided to go for the easiest of the 4 artifact caves, the Artifact of the Sky Lord. It's in the snow, so he probably should have just done this while he was there about 30 minutes ago, but oh well. All the caves up to this point haven't been that bad, and this one shouldn't be too terrible either. But the final two caves, the hard snow cave and the swamp cave, those are going to be the most difficult parts of this entire challenge. The snow cave has some of the coldest temperatures in this entire game, and the swamp cave has poison that just straight up erases people named Carl. And without crafting the necessary items, well, it's definitely going to be interesting. Anyways, Carl needed to beat the Skylord cave first, and they had finally arrived. The direwolf was too big to fit, surprise surprise, and he almost got permanently stuck there for a second. So Carl would have to do this on foot alone. Well, not completely alone, at least he has Fred. He slowly made his way with cloth armor, a crossbow, and 100 health. Yeah, it's not looking great. As he snuck past, there were a ton of Mega Rabies advocates on the left side. Dude, the artifact is right there. Carl realized that he doesn't have grapples. This shortcut with grapples is why this cave is normally so easy, but now it might pose some issues. The other way around has a large cult of Carl haters, and all of them are bigger than Carl himself, so he tried to go around, but he found himself at a dead end. I guess I don't know this cave too well. The only option now was for Carl to confront his fears. For some reason, the hit markers weren't working properly, but he managed to delete a spider that was 3 times his body weight. But then this happened. Oh, he's fast. Please, no. Where's the exit, bro? Carl got deleted. And so did Fred. So on day 59, Carl had to find another otter before going back to the frozen death trap. He stopped to spectate the prehistoric world war of Rex versus Bronto, but after the Rex called in some backup, Carl's entertainment was derailed by this micro dude again. And then as he moved along the river, a group of the micro dude's thug cousins showed up. No, let me move. No. Oh, there's another. He was able to use the water to avoid the other Microraptor, and Carl survived with 7 health left. Okay. He was also starving though, so he had to eat some raw meat, which almost deleted him. Get away from me, bro. So Carl made sure to stay away from the redwoods from now on, and he swam for a while looking for an otter. Man's is training for a triathlon. On day 60, Carl finally found another otter, but then after slaying this salmon and trying to feed the little dude, Carl's 3% body fat failed to insulate and his bones broke due to the cold. He barely made it out of the swimming pool, but luckily outside of the water it was warm enough for him to heal up, and after he regained some health, he tamed the otter and headed back to his penthouse. On the way there, he found this Alpha Carno and put a ton of effort into fighting the dude, but he didn't get any armor from it. When he made it back to base, Carl decided to head back to the easy snow cave, but he wasn't sure exactly what he should do. He had no good armor, he couldn't fit any tames, and he can't build anything. Or can he? Carl picked up his 2 boss flags. Maybe these tiny structures would be enough to block a pathway while he sniped the Mega Rabies advocates. It's possible that they'll just destroy or fly right past them, but it's worth a shot. This is probably the first time I've ever been intimidated by this cave, but having to go on foot at level 1 is absolutely terrifying. Anyways, Carl finally made it to the cave, so he put all of his extra gear into the direwolf and he started heading in. He only has 1 shot with these flags. But after making it inside, he found his bag from earlier. It hadn't despawned yet. So he went ahead and brought his old gear back out to the wolves so at least he wouldn't lose that. And then he continued on his path. But before he could even get the flag set up, the Mega Rabies connoisseur became sentient. Carl contracted the disease and then he got Control Alt deleted. Carl was very sad and deceased. But then when Carl saw his dying otter fighting back, it gave him an idea. He could tame something small enough to fit inside the cave. So he thought about that while breeding some more wolves. And after claiming the baby, he evaluated all of his tames. His Moss Chops most likely wouldn't fit because he's looking a bit thick, but his Patchy definitely had some potential. The issue is he can't ride the Patchy. So while he pondered on that for a while, he decided to head back down the river. When he made it back with his new otter, Carl saw an Alpha Rex right next to his Rex army. That's kind of convenient. He dropped this ramshackle hide helmet, which is not great, but he definitely needs it. So he continued his strategizing, comparing his Patchy size to his direwolf. Most things that are small are really bad, like Dilos would just disintegrate at the sight of a cave, but there is one little thing that's annoyingly good. I'm kind of disgusted to say this, but Trudons. Trudons are the bane of my existence. So Carl decided that he might give that a try. But then Carl saw his baby direwolf and he got an even better idea. So he ran all the way back to the snow cave, farming a bit of meat on the way there. And then he started breeding the direwolves right outside of the cave. The direwolves can't fit in there, but their children can. Carl's an evil genius. But then the mating was broken again. The direwolves have better morals than Carl, but after reloading the game and experiencing 2 crashes, they finally started breeding again. And there's like nothing else to do since he's on the corner of the map, so he just kind of stood there and watched. On day 63, Carl claimed the child, grabbed some breakfast, and headed into the cave. The baby direwolf didn't want to follow Carl, probably because the game's pathfinding is broken, but for narrative purposes, the direwolf baby knew that Carl was gonna make him fight some mega rabies advocates, and he was scared. So Carl gave him a quick uppercut to the jaw, but that didn't work. So he whistled to a location, but all of the wolves responded, which crashed the game again. Yeah, you gotta be kind of careful with these cave entrances, but like I said earlier, I did figure out that Battle Eye was the reason the game kept crashing, so it does get fixed, don't worry. Anyways, Carl led the baby into the cave, and he knew that if he walked away, the baby direwolf would most likely fall under the map, so he just stood there for a while. And now the baby was no longer a baby, and he's also never going to leave this cave. So now that Carl had a wolf inside the cave, it was time to get the artifact. He tried to shoot the bats, but the arrows kept clipping into the stalactites. I just had to Google and make sure I said the right thing. Yeah, the stalactites are the ones on the ceiling. So since he couldn't shoot them, he had to head over on his oversized wolf, and when he encountered the bat, he contracted mega rabies immediately. Are you actually serious right now? He tried to run forward to take out some more bats before he inevitably passed, but the direwolf couldn't fit any further, and when Carl dismounted, I'm stuck, bro! And it didn't take long before Carl's immune system exploded. So yeah, he wasted an entire day raising the direwolf just to take out one level 15 bat. Maybe he won't fall under the map? And after spending half of a day taming a new otter so he wouldn't freeze to death, he set back out for the snow cave. When Carl made it to the cave, he slayed this wild direwolf, and he found his other wolf inside the wall. Incarcerated was clearly under the map, and there's a little baby inside the wall here. What is going on? He saw a glimpse of green above him though. Maybe that was his other wolf somehow? Carl decided to head into the cave and get his stuff back real quick. So he started sneaking in, and he actually found the bag with the flags from earlier lodged in the ceiling. He continued until he saw a bat, and he tried to test the flag. Yeah, it's way too tall. He was scared that if he shot the bat, he'd be running across the earth to tame an otter again, so he headed back out. Fred? Fred, is that you? Somehow Fred just randomly showed up after falling under the map like 5 days ago. I have no idea what's going on right now. Like, everything just teleported when Carl last died, but at least Fred's back. So Carl left Fred outside and used the other otter because he wanted Fred to live, and he brought the baby direwolf in there to raise it and try this again. But Carl got kind of bored, and then he accidentally aggroed a bat. Run! He didn't have to run faster than the bat, just faster than his baby direwolf. The bat couldn't get out of the entrance though, so he just kind of shot at it and finished him off with the wolf. Oh! Carl went deeper into the cave and the tunnel was actually clear. He made it to the artifact. Well, that's concerning. So he headed back out of the cave, and one of the males was still stuck. Yeah, I don't know. Basically just gambling with who gets stuck in the wall every time. I won't make you guys watch all this again, but essentially Carl went back to base, and he grabbed another female and brought her back to the cave. And then he bred another baby wolf and led the little guy into the cave. Carl's not a very good parent. Anyways, he led the baby into the cave, and this is the perfect example of how bad the pathfinding actually is on this game. Do you see this? Carl is trying to avoid that bat over there, but this dude's running in circles, turning around, running all the way down the other tunnel, trying to get Carl assaulted by the mega rabies advocate. So Carl had to give him some motivation. He really needed to get him to the back cavern before he grows bigger. Oh no. Get out the way, bro! Somehow that spider just managed to randomly spawn in. But luckily, Carl managed to run away. His breeder wolf was literally stuck in the entrance again. This game has some issues. So Carl bred the wolves again, while one of them was stuck inside the wall. and finally brought the little guy to his destination. So on day 68, Carl's child became a man, but he was too big and too close to the ceiling for Carl to ride. So Carl tried to whistle him a little closer. Not that far! Oh wait, did they just self-delete? That actually worked out way better than what I was gonna try. There was one spider left though, and he was stuck behind the artifact, so Carl couldn't hit him. But now Carl was stuck. He didn't know what to do about the spider. If he grabs the artifact, he's probably gonna die. And then to make matters worse, well, the game crashed. Yeah, it wasn't a very good day for Carl. So after he made it back to the snow with another otter, he ran through the cave trying to get a peek from the backside. And when he made it all the way to the cavern, luckily nothing respawned. And the spider fell off the cliff right after it killed Carl, so everything was clear. The day was already over at this point, so Carl grabbed the artifact and was ready to head out. Oh, no. Do I have to make that jump? So Carl tried his best to jump back up the way he came, but he has the genetics of a toddler. He had to make this jump. Okay. Carl ran out of that cave as fast as his knees would take him. Get me out of here. And then after saying goodbye to all the wall direwolves, Carl headed back home. That cave was so much more difficult than I would have ever imagined, and it kind of showcased the issues with single player perfectly. Like, most of the otters and the wolves aren't even dead, they just fell under the map. But the best part is that the next two caves are going to be significantly more difficult. I'm actually considering running my own server for future videos just so I don't have to deal with all this, like falling under the map and clipping through walls and all that in these caves. Also, I'm probably going to start recording in 1440 instead of 1080, maybe my next video, because I know a lot of you guys watch on TV, so let me know if that's something you would want. Anyways, Carl was about to make it to the green obelisk, but before Carl could jump down, this calico threw a snowball at Carl. Except it wasn't made of snow, it was made of something else that happens to be brown. Anyways, after that, Carl dropped off the artifact and headed back home. So now there were only two caves left, and Carl wasn't prepared for either one. The hardest cave on this map, and potentially in the entire game, is the snow cave. Carl knew that the Rexes wouldn't fit, and direwolves would die so fast that for them to be viable, he's gonna need a lot of backups. It's also the coldest area on the entire map, and otters most likely won't fix that problem. Although Fred is a pretty high level, so we'll have to see if it works. And then the swamp cave, on the other hand, is much easier. He should be able to clear this one with a single direwolf. But the issue with this cave is that there's poison, and you have to use a gas mask or a scuba tank to not instantly die. Carl is not very crafty. Carl actually does have a plan though, but this is going to be one of the most insane things that has ever been attempted on my channel. So you'll definitely see that soon, but for now, Carl bred 10 baby direwolves, which took all day, and he now had to wait around because he wanted to make sure that they got imprints. Carl managed to imprint all but 3 of the wolves because they wanted gourmet meals, and Carl cannot make anything fancier than a bread sandwich. Anyways, that took about half the day, but now Carl had to wait on them to grow up. So he decided to grab a crossbow and some chitin. The next step of his plan would take place in the redwoods. I'm not going to explain why he's doing what he's doing yet because I want to see if anybody can possibly guess. Just leave a comment. It has to do with him finding a method to breed in the swamp cave, and it's a multi-step process. And step 1 in that plan is for Carl to find and tame an Archaeopteryx, because Carl can't craft parachutes and he's going to need to glide down somewhere for his plan. So Carl started searching for one of the little guys and almost immediately died again. The direwolf actually reacting to the microraptors is like a 50-50 chance for some reason. Anyways, Carl searched for an Arca for a while. He was heading towards 50-50 on the map because for some reason they usually get stuck there. Oh, nice.
I have a question for God. Why?
Great job, Carl. Anyways, there was another one pretty close by, but it ran away. But Carl did find an Alpha Carno that donated him a hide shirt and some boots. Carl realized that he keeps seeing them getting stuck on these ledges for some reason. I think maybe they're trying to fly up and they just get caught on it. It didn't take long for him to find another one, and it was level 100. Sorry about that. To tame these guys, they actually eat chitin because, well, I don't know why or how, but they do. And at this moment, Carl could now fly. Bro, look how he has his arms just straight up while he's holding it. There's no way Carl's triceps are strong enough for that. So Carl dropped Flappy Bird off at the green obelisk and uploaded him to the cloud server to keep him safe. He then Control-Alt-Deleted this Alpha Raptor. Oh, that's actually really good. And then he went back to the Redwoods and tamed one more Arca as a backup. Carl eventually made it back to 50-50 and... well, this glitch is still in the game. The Arcas are all just gathering at the center of the map and flying straight up and down. I think this is the reason that they're all stuck on the cliff down there. Oh, jackpot. Yeah, there's like 20 of them just standing here. Carl got a bit carried away. He tried to lead them all to the obelisk, but they're incredibly slow. So he just took the best one and left the extras here for later, assuming they don't get exterminated or something. On day 73, Carl made it back to base, and since it had been 2 days, the wolves were all raised. So he decided to grab some pre-incubated Rex eggs and then just launch them at each direwolf, giving them all their first combat kill. This gave them each roughly 20 levels, so Carl pumped their health a bunch so they could survive the snow cave. He wanted to go ahead and have them healing up because now he's gonna use his new Arca to help him take down the swamp cave. So he grabbed the fella and uploaded him to the cloud server at the green op, and then he went to tame another otter because he didn't want Fred to die. It took the entire day because otters are very annoying to find, but eventually he tamed another otter. And when he made it back to base, he whistled a backup direwolf to follow him, and they headed to the green obelisk. He sent his tames to the shadow realm, and then he uploaded himself to a mine drive. 3.6 out of 2 billion XP. Yeah, he's almost there.
Place was hotter than heck.
Cool story, bro. So Carl made his way to the red obelisk, eating some cactus sap to not die from thirst, and eventually he managed to survive. Anyways, he made it to the obelisk and he took out Draco the direwolf, and then proceeded to get assaulted by mega rabies advocates again. Carl literally teleports into a desert in another dimension and he still can't get away from these dudes. He took out his low-level otter from the obelisk, which should protect him from the heat, but maybe not the heat waves. He also isn't capable of carrying the otter and the parachute shoulder pad at the same time. I'm not gonna claim to understand ARK's logic, but that definitely makes things a lot harder than they need to be. And I guess that brings us to address the elephant in the room. Why is Carl in the desert right now? I guess I should probably explain what's going on. The plan here is to beat the swamp cave, but not by using a gas mask or a scuba tank. Carl can't craft anything like that because he can't get normal engrams. He can't level up. But if you beat the broodmother on alpha difficulty, you unlock the engram for the tech helmet. And the tech helmet actually does allow you to breathe underwater or survive the poison in the swamp cave. And the alpha broodmother is hard enough, but the bigger problem with this plan is that it requires a tech replicator to craft. That's pretty expensive. All of those materials are difficult, but the real issue is that it requires metal ingots, which is impossible because Carl cannot craft a refining forge. So yeah, that's why he's here in the desert, because there's one creature in the entire game, well, ARK Ascended, that can cook metal for you. Pause for dramatic effect. The Phoenix. Unfortunately, they're one of the rarest and hardest to tame creatures on the entire game, and they require a source of fire damage to tame. Except Carl can't craft like anything, so he's gonna have to resort to spitting flames. But not like that. He's gonna have to steal a fire wyvern egg. This is gonna be interesting. So he waited around until nighttime approached to hopefully not die from the heat. He wasn't able to use an otter to protect him because Flappy Bird is taking up the shoulder pet slot. And at this point, the temperature seemed low enough, so now it was time. Ow. Luckily, the temperature was perfect at nighttime, and the first section of the scar was pretty clear, just one poison wyvern lurking around. There was also a couple empty nests on the other side. The level of the egg here doesn't really matter, it just needs to be a fire egg. On day 75, Carl did manage to find a fire egg that was guarded by 3 different militaries of poison, lightning, and fire, so he continued on with his search, and most of the nests were empty for some reason. But then, this happened. Ah! There was nowhere to run, so Carl had to fight this beast. He figured out that when he jumps, he can actually get some good hits in. This direwolf's kind of insane. This part of the scar, though, was actually pretty clear. But unfortunately, Carl's parachute got deep fried, so he would have to go back and get another. So after a bit more soul searching, Carl found this fire egg right across the gap next to this giant crystal. Okay, this one might be the move. The scar is pretty clear in this area. There's just 2 mentally deficient wyverns flying into the wall right here. So Carl got a bit closer, and I don't know what bro was trying to do right here, but he was locked in on that wall. So Carl tried getting his attention. There's a wall there, hot wing. Carl really wanted to delete this flamethrower, but it wasn't going as well as last time. He wasn't able to hit him as easily, and his health was very low. He tried to run away and lose aggro to heal up, but the wyvern chased him to the end of the earth. You can basically consider the direwolf deceased at this point, but then by some miracle, the wyvern got distracted on some poor soul over there. So Carl went back to the fire egg, and after pulling all those wyverns away, this section of the scar was empty. This was amazing news because everything was going to plan. But then Carl got spotted. Bro, why did I just do that? Carl needed to die and get back to the ob anyway since he lost his parachute. But he really messed up by panicking and leading the wyvern back into the scar. Anyways, after he grabbed his backup wolf, Flappy Bird, and some very high-tech gear, Carl headed back up the mountain and down to the scar. He farmed a bit of meat so he could heal up if needed, and he managed to drop Flappy Bird under this rock so he couldn't get roasted. And then he got revenge on his mortal enemy. And after kiting this poison wyvern away from the scar, everything was set up to perfection. Carl evaluated, he double-checked, and he triple-checked the area just to be sure. And yeah, all the wyverns are away from the fire egg here. This might be his only chance. So he said goodbye to his unnamed direwolf, and he jumped into an abyss filled with lava. Wait, how do I go down? So Carl froze time by pausing the simulation, and after a quick Google search, he realized that he messed up. These things descend super slow, and there's nothing he can do about it except for just dropping to his death, of course. So after waiting like 2 minutes to drop 5 foot and losing more and more health due to the heat, Carl was hovering right above the nest. I've got to be low enough here, right? What? At this point, Carl was out of direwolves and parachutes, so it was time to regroup and call in some backup. When Carl came home from his business trip, the direwolves were all about halfway healed. Just in case you're curious, whenever Carl is traveling between maps, instead of just changing the day counter, I'm actually speeding up time. That way the direwolves are healing the correct amount and all of that. Anyways, Carl managed to spend half of day 75 leading 3 direwolves and 3 ARKs that he tamed earlier all the way to the green obelisk. And then he sent them all to the desert simulation. Back on Scorched Earth, Carl made it back to the Red Ob, grabbed his wolf and his organic parachute, and he headed back up to the mountain to arrive at the scar. Luckily, the egg was still here. I wasn't actually sure if things would change when he left servers, but everything seems to be pretty consistent. So Carl prepared to take flight, and since he learned from his last experience that these guys can't be controlled vertically, he decided to sacrifice his direwolf to dismount at the perfect height. Have a nice life. This is gonna be close. So after Carl safely landed in the hometown of a giant fire wyvern, he noticed that the egg was bigger than him and weighs 50 pounds. So he upgraded Flappy Bird's weight past 50 and put the other ARKa on the right side of the ledge here to prepare for what was about to go down. This is probably his only shot at this, and his health was dropping from the heat very fast. So Carl managed to throw Flappy Bird down into the trench with the egg, and then he quickly used the other parachute to kite any potential pursuers away from Flappy Bird. But there wasn't any directly aggroed, meaning he most likely cleared out everything in the area, and he actually should be good. There's a whole lot over there though. Oh, please don't go that way. So yeah. Carl perished. He was really worried that the wyverns would notice that Flappy Bird's hiding in their basement, so he tried to hurry back, but the Red Ob was being blocked by one of those, I don't know what those are. I think they just got added to the game like yesterday, but he managed to avoid both of them. Okay, 10 minutes later, Carl summoned his best direwolf and his best friend, Fred. This is super risky because Carl really needs Fred for the snow cave. But Fred is also the only thing that can protect Carl from the awful heat at the bottom of the scar. And he's also hoping that Fred will be able to incubate the wyvern egg because he's not going to be able to get out the scar until that thing is raised. As he made his way up the mountain trail, he found another one of those new Ceratosauruses. Is that how you say it? Ceratosaurus? Anyway, the dude tried to delete Fred, so Carl returned the favor and then adopted his child. He named the little guy Alien because he didn't know that the creature existed. And then he got a dossier. Nice. Extremely aggressive. Yeah, I figured that out already. Carl left the little psychopath here with some meat and promised to come back for him later. When he made it to the top of the mountain, there was a lightning wyvern guarding the airspace, but he managed to find a clear area to jump, and almost died from mistiming the dismount, but he was saved by this winged gentleman. He farmed some meat and almost got a little too close to a poison wyvern. He was almost there, but then a sandstorm hit. This is not good. Carl tried his best to just hide and wait out the storm because he had to survive. It was really scary because sandstorms will drain your water and Carl might evaporate, but luckily Fred's installation seemed to be kind of overpowered on this map, and at the end of day 78, the sandstorm was over. Carl didn't disintegrate. His water was pretty low, but he couldn't waste any more time. So he marked Flappy Bird on his tracker and he headed right above him in the scar. There was a wyvern very close to Flappy Bird that probably headed closer when he grabbed the egg. But luckily while he was healing up, the wyvern got distracted by an RG and he flew the other direction. This was his chance, so Carl jumped straight down into the abyss, almost dying from both lava and fall damage, but he did it. Carl made it into the scar with an otter and a fire egg. He was scared that if he grabbed the egg out of Flappy Bird's inventory, the wyverns would all physically, emotionally, spiritually, and then theoretically assault him, so instead he just dropped it out of the dude's inventory. Too cold? How are you too cold? Bro, there's lava 10 foot to your left. So he dropped Fred to try and incubate the egg, but it was still too cold somehow. And then he realized that he was rapidly dying from not having Fred on his shoulder. So he scooped back up Fred and then he went inside of the egg. Wait, I think it's working. Carl just now realized that this dude is only level 45. He never even checked until now. But that's okay because he just needs the fire breath and he actually won't need milk to raise the guy. Whenever you use single player settings, it doesn't actually take 4 days to raise. But it will take roughly an hour, and that's a whole lot of time for a wyvern to come over and ruin the entire operation. The only way that Carl's getting out of this trench is flying out on this wyvern. But Carl's water levels were getting dangerously low. He tried not to move to conserve his water as much as possible, and now you guys get to watch some very, very entertaining gameplay. It's kind of like those time lapses when you are on YouTube and you just watch someone's dog grow up in 10 seconds. Okay, so it's been roughly 25 minutes, Carl's thirsty, and the wyvern is ready for imprint. So Carl ate all of the berries from the direwolf's inventory, and then he took his son out for a walk. There was a fire wyvern in the distance that was getting a bit too close, so they decided to move a little bit further down, but Carl's hydration levels are not looking good. He still has a very long time before this fireman is raised. Yeah, I'm probably gonna die. While he was waiting on his demise, Carl saw Flappy Bird just staring him down, and he got inspired. And then he just kind of stood there because he had nothing else to do. So after almost getting mauled by a tooth of the saber variant, Carl imprinted his child and waved goodbye. And then he continued his journey to the scar for the 6th time. There are so many wyverns up here, so it was kind of hard for Carl to get to the right angle. But it's a good thing Carl managed to kite them up here and not down in the scar by Flappy Bird. Anyways, Carl went skydiving.
And when he made it over, he instantly scooped up Fred and started chugging some cactus sap to quench his thirst. 9.2 health, by the way. I'm pretty sure Flappy Bird somehow fell under the map. Makes sense. Carl never actually looked at his wyvern stats, but they're pretty bad to be honest. Anyways, he had the stuff to not be thirsty now, and most wyverns were in the air above the scar, so we should be good. But this is taking a really long time, and beating this challenge by day 100 is gonna be really close at this point. Anyways, on day 80, Flappy Bird was ready for his third and final imprint. And Carl, while being careful not to sprint to conserve his water, managed to get him to 100%. There were some degenerates over in the distance, so they decided to walk back to the other side. And after a few more minutes of racing, Carl actually did it. He had a wyvern at level 1. What do I do now?
I don't know. I never thought I'd get this far.
So Carl took flight. He brought his direwolf back to the obelisk to send him home to the island, but Carl's job on Scorched Earth was not over yet. And even though getting that wyvern at level 1 is one of the most difficult things that I've ever attempted on this entire game, this next part might be worse. Carl needed to farm some trank arrows and a bow, because he lost his crossbow in the scar and he didn't want to go back to the island right now. His plan was simple. Phoenixes only spawn during heat waves. They can literally be anywhere on the map. There's only one on the map at a time, and they despawn when the heat wave ends. Sounds pretty easy, right? He was farming these trank arrows to tame a parasaur, because these guys can be used like a metal detector to reveal all living organisms within their range. This includes the Phoenix, of course, but it also includes the Phoenix even when there is not a heat wave going on. I would typically encourage just only looking for them during heat waves, but since I'm limited to 100 days, we have to do this as fast as possible. Anyways, they basically just detect like an invisible dot where the Phoenix last was before the heat wave ended. And then you can know exactly where it's gonna spawn when the next heat wave starts. Okay, so Carl didn't find a bow, so instead he decided to just kidnap this low-level parasaur, and he brought the fella to an undisclosed location. Hey, buddy. I can't believe that actually worked. Wait, I seem to be stuck. Carl tried to escape, but even after the parasaur was finished taming, he was still trapped in the pit of doom. He tried whistling Flappy Bird over, trying to mount from every angle possible, but nothing was working. Eventually, his brain grew 3 sizes, and he set the parasaur to ignore whistles and then whistled the wyvern over. And he managed to find one single frame where the wing was accessible. Victory! And after some complex maneuvers, he managed to scoop up his new Phoenix detector. After regrouping at the red obelisk, Carl's only safe place on this map, he put the parasaur on turret mode, which is essentially the mode where the parasaur starts detecting nearby enemies. So even though the Phoenix isn't visible right now, the parasaur can still tell where it is, so Carl can spawn trap it for when the heat wave starts. All of those red circles are the parasaur detecting enemies. It's a bit more useful on PvP where it only shows players and their tames, but on PvE this man just goes to war with everybody. So yeah, it's very doable, but Carl is gonna have to go very slow and check every single creature on the map. If you've ever tried to tame a Phoenix before, then you know, this might take a while. So it's been like 2.5 hours and Carl's still searching, unfortunately. Basically, he's just scouting every inch of the map, kind of like he's mowing the lawn. And at this point, he had covered the entire map, some parts more than once. So he started making his way around the mountains again because that's where he's found Phoenix in the past. He still wasn't finding much, but after he landed on the mountain and his parasaur got assaulted by the mountain mafia, he noticed this detection in the air. Normally, this would just mean that an RG or vulture flew by and it's just not there anymore. But he sat here for a couple ticks and it kept repeating. This definitely could be a phoenix. He might have even seen this before and just brushed it off, because usually the red dot would be coming from the ground where they fall after turning to ashes and not just floating in the air. So Carl was a bit unsure of what he was looking at, whether it was a phoenix or maybe just a glitch. And since he wasn't too sure what he was looking at, he decided to keep it in the back of his mind, but he kept searching for now. However, about 20 minutes later, a heat wave began. First time I've ever been excited about that. At first, Carl was just excited to be able to search faster and maybe see the phoenix a little bit easier. But then he remembered what he had seen earlier. So he decided to go back and investigate. No way! It's actually a phoenix. The red dot was indeed a phoenix. Carl couldn't believe his eyes. He actually found one. This one was level 90, so it's a bit more difficult to tame, but it's not the worst. He has unlimited fire because of the wyvern, but hitting enough shots before the heat wave ends is a lot more challenging than you might think. Mainly because the fire has nowhere close to the range that it visually shows, and you actually have to hold the position to have the breath continuously hitting it, otherwise the taming won't really go up very much. It's pretty annoying, to be honest. But luckily, the heat wave is during the nighttime, and Fred's a beast, so Carl doesn't really have to worry about dying from heat. And eventually, he started getting pretty good at aiming his shots using first-person riding. And then, on day 86, it happened. Yes, sir! I've been thinking about this name for the last 2 hours. The heatwave did end like 30 seconds later, so if that phoenix was any higher level, Carl probably would have failed. Anyways, he uploaded Hot Wings safely into the cloud server. Luckily, Fred survived the onslaught, but the parasaur got caught in the crossfire. Carl didn't really need the dude anymore though, so he just paid his respects and uploaded Fred and Flappy Burn. And then got recruited into a Mega Rabies cult. I hate this map. He didn't have anything good on him, so he just ran over to the Green Knob and then booked a flight back to the island. So now Carl was back on the island, and he noticed that the wolves were all healed. And he now has 14 days to finish the challenge. He decided to grab his best armor because he can't afford to die at this point, and he started heading towards the obelisk to get Fred. The Rexes are all looking good as well, so he decided he would start with taking on the Alpha Broodmother, so he could get the engram for the tech helmet. Actually, grinding for the tech replicator and getting 150 black pearls is gonna be another story, and so is the entire snow cave in general, but he was gonna take it one step at a time. And after catastrophic dismount failure, he decided to leave the Phoenix here for now, and he brought Fred and Flappy Burn back from the Shadow Realm. It is so nice to be able to fly. Carl went straight to the lava cave because he needed to grab the 3 Broodmother artifacts again. He had to heal a little bit first because of the fall damage, but he was expecting this to be pretty easy because Fred could fully protect him from the heat, and the direwolf's a bit of a menace, so the only real risk here is Mega Rabies. Carl ran out of the cave because he doesn't want to die and have his tames all fall under the map, and he put everything in the direwolf and prepared for deletion. Anyways, Carl entered the cave, and this time he managed to avoid any highly contagious diseases. Oh, he just walked the plank. And he managed to grab the artifact pretty easily. He went straight over to the Hunter Cave next, and besides an absolute onslaught of spiders, why are there so many? That artifact was super simple. Next on his list, he headed to the Central Cave to grab the last Broodmother artifact. There's bats in here too, but it's honestly not too bad, and he managed to avoid Mega Rabies. So that was pretty easy, and it only took like a day. And after dropping off his direwolf at the obelisk, Carl still needed a few tributes for the Alpha Broodmother spawn, so he made his way to the swamp to steal the skin off of some Sarcos. And then he hunted along the river to loot the vertebrae off of some brontos. Flappy Burn almost turned to ash at one point, but he already had the rest of the tributes at his base, so now it was time to take on the Alpha Broodmother. Well, after he walks halfway across the map. On day 89, he finally arrived at the obelisk. It took forever per usual, but the Wyvern actually did help a pretty good bit. Carl was a little bit worried about this though, because even though he's on single player settings, Alpha difficulty is a whole nother beast. And then when he finally did get to the obelisk and he was trying to whistle them to all get into the circle, one of the boss Rexes just turns around and jumps off the cliff. So Carl flew down to try to get him unstuck. He just randomly turns around again. Dude, the pathfinding on this game, it's more of a challenge than being level 1, to be honest. Anyways, he eventually got the dude back up there and he got everybody in the circle. And after carrying over all the tributes from his Wyvern to the obelisk, Carl was as prepared as he's gonna get. I have no idea how this is gonna go. As they enter the fight, Carl was pretty confident. He's playing on single player settings and his Rexes have insane stats. But that's not the full story. The Alpha Broodmother is brutal regardless, and without saddles, there's no guarantee that this is gonna work. From a distance, it looks like this fight is going pretty well. But even though the Alpha Broodmother attacks slowly, she's hitting for 5,000 damage per hit. These Rexes are taking a beating, and this fight is gonna be close. Not everything always goes to plan. Carl should have realized that the Rexes with no saddles weren't enough to beat Alpha. It's too late to breed another army, but it wasn't over just yet. Carl actually had a backup save from earlier, and he decided to time travel to before the fight. I'm aware this is technically cheating, but it would take a solid 10 days to breed and level a whole new army, and we all want to see if Carl can actually pull this off. And even though single player settings make the Gamma fights really easy, no saddles make the Alpha fights kind of impossible. Like, did y'all see when the Broodmother did half the Direwolf's health in one hit? So yeah, Carl's probably gonna fail this every time like this, so he needs to make a change. Rexes are just about as strong as it gets on this game, but one thing that he can do to make them even stronger is to tame a Yudi. But unfortunately, it's gonna take 93 trank arrows for a level 150. He actually did have 51 trank arrows. It's not really that much considering it's from the last 40 days of caving and scorched earth shenanigans. But 51 shots paired with his 190% damage crossbow could definitely work, as long as he aims a little bit lower level and he doesn't miss too many shots. He's only gonna have one chance at this though, because those arrows took half the run to farm, so he's gonna have to make them count. As Carl explored the snow, he spotted someone yelling in the distance. He didn't have a spyglass, or anything per usual, so he has to get super close and personal just to check the level. 90, that's actually not bad. But after Carl started shooting, the Yudi screamed, which caused his direwolf to get scared and start running for his mama. But once the little dude recovered from his fears, Carl lodged a few more trank arrows in this fella's ribcage, and then the direwolf proceeded to remember that he was scared again, and this cycle just kept repeating of Carl spraying arrows into this man's shoulder blades, and then the direwolf being absolutely mortified for exactly 15 seconds. And eventually, after shooting like 40 arrows into the dude, the Yudi started running away from Carl. Oh, how the turns have tabled. Except this dude walks faster than Carl can run. Carl almost managed to catch up, but was denied entry by a flock of wild bouncers. And once he finally got the chance to shoot, it only took one arrow. So yeah, the Yudi was fast asleep in the negative 200-degree snow. So Carl went back to the aftermath and munched on this carno, and he used the prime meat to feed his new recruit. Bro just lets people walk all over him. On day 90, Carl gave the Yudi an appropriate yet familiar name, for old time's sake. So if you don't know why this is such a game changer, essentially the Yudi's Roar will buff every single one of Carl's Rexes, so they'll all deal more damage and they'll take less. And hopefully that'll be enough to turn the tides in Carl's favor. Anyways, when he made it back to base, Carl whistled all of the direwolves to follow, and he grabbed some regular arrows for his best crossbow. He wasn't gonna do the fight just yet because after leveling Katy Perry, she's gonna need some time to heal up before fighting the Broodmother. And Carl's gonna need some time to procrastinate because he's kinda scared. And in the meantime, he's gonna head to the Hard Snow Cave to get the other artifact that he needs for Doug. The Artifact of the Strong. Great pathfinding, by the way. This cave is arguably the hardest part of the entire map, and Carl wasn't sure if 10 wolves with 30k health each would be enough, but after leading them all the way across the snow and showing all the trees in his path who's boss, he arrived outside of the snow cave. But before going in, he quickly flew over to the red obelisk to grab the last direwolf that was uploaded from Scorched Earth, and he brought him over as well. And then Carl came up with the amazing idea of naming these direwolves after members of Juztify's Discord server. Some of you may die,
but it's a sacrifice I am willing to make.
It's honestly kind of funny seeing everybody in the server just roast the people that don't make it. Anyways, as Carl entered the cave, everything was getting stuck and General Lee is somehow inside the floor before even making it past the entrance. So he was already down one direwolf, and to make matters worse, well, this happened. The wolves won't attack while in the water, I guess. Luckily, he managed to clear the first area. Oh, that's a polar bear. Why did they hit so hard? And while that was happening, one of the wolves was getting jumped in the water. If you get jumped while you're in the water, you should call that getting belly flop. Luckily, Carl stepped in and saved the day, but it seems somehow they lost another wolf along with the one stuck in the entrance. Most of the others are looking pretty decent, but 3 of the 7 survivors are already at half health. These things hit hard, man. Oh, that's the one that was missing. Where was he even at? So Carl decided he was going to take it slow from now on, and he stopped to heal up the 3 low health wolves before going any deeper. And after spending like 10 minutes shoving raw meat down their esophagus, they made their way to the next area. Where are you guys going? Apparently the wild direwolves were all running away. Or maybe it was just time for a shift change and we'd get some new degenerates in here. Either way, that was pretty weird, but at least Carl's able to easily cross the water now without having any problems. Wait, where are y'all going? So they all just took off and aggroed everything for no reason, and Carl was forced to retaliate, but he had to keep spamming whistles because his pack was dead set on aggroing the polar bears over there. Most of them wouldn't even fight back because the water was touching their pinky toe. And Carl had to clear out the entire section essentially by himself while they just went ham biting all of the IQ deficient wolves. They're basically all below half health now. And then after all of that was over, Carl literally had to go one by one and jump each wolf over the water because they're incapable of consciously swimming on their own. I don't know what's happening right now, but this improved pathfinding on ASA is awful. And Carl can't just have everything running in at once like this, because if one bear hits and it hits everything at once, that's a lot of damage. And on top of that, the AI doesn't fight back half the time. So yeah, Carl is definitely gonna have to take it slow and use one wolf at a time from now on. But after Carl healed up for a little bit, he brought all the wolves through the tunnel into the next cavern. And he left them all here to keep the pack and the mate boost while he cleared the area alone. This strategy was working pretty well, and he has plenty of backup wolves to grab if this one gets to low health. Bro is on that cold shower grind set right now. This direwolf is about half health, which is not too bad for that area, to be honest. But after deconstructing this giant crystal and finding a yellow cave drop that's rumored to contain amazing loot, but Carl will never know if that's true or not, he was about to arrive at the worst part of this cave. This section is infamous for overspawning at the end of the tunnel. And Carl didn't want to risk getting stunned by a Prolovia, so he decided for this part to whistle over a wolf as bait. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was the commencement of the Revolutionary War. Well, that went surprisingly well. All of the wolves are below half health, and some are extremely low after that, but it didn't really faze Carl. He just kind of switched wolves again and continued on. He made his way to the next area, and he told his pack to stay. There were 2 polar bears down here at the bottom of the ramp. And after that short fight, he was already down 5k health. Those things are ridiculously overpowered. Like, why do polar bears, which overspawn in here by the way, do 1,000 damage per hit? That's the same as a gamma boss. Anyways, Carl excavated another crystal, and even though this strategy is going surprisingly well at this point, it was even more surprising that Fred was still insulating. This cave gets colder as you get deeper, but I guess everything's all good. Carl's been avoiding the cold, and he's been avoiding Perlovia stunts. Oh, I think they see me. So this area that Carl just cleared is like the last choke point, the super overspawned area where you can die really easy. And since Carl's past that now, things are looking great. So he Control-Alt-Deleted the last polar bear, which did a modest 8k damage to Carl's wolf, and he continued on, slowly, to look out for Pelovias. There weren't really any good direwolf options left, so he had to grab an unimprinted one that's at half health, but he managed to use his crossbow to bait this polar bear over. Carl ransacked this polar bear. They were now approaching the final cavern with the artifact, and this is the finale. So Carl just full sent everyone. After everything was clear, he noticed that half the wolves fell down into the 200-degree water. Negative 200 degrees is what I meant to say. It's not lava. Anyway, when Carl went down to rescue them, he realized that there was about 30,000 saber-toothed salmon down here beefing with his crew. So he started fishing the old-fashioned way, and after a bit of a struggle, he brought all of the wolves to safety except for Aragon. The poor dude was on the bottom, and he couldn't regain any stamina. This is where his journey will end. And just like that, Carl had acquired the artifact of the strong. Leaving the cave was much easier than entering because everything was removed from existence at this point. And as Carl made it to the exit, right past General Lee, all of the wolves managed to fail their pathfinding exam, so he had to grab them all one by one again. KJ's over here randomly phasing into the floor. And then when he whistled all, General Lee randomly became a pathfinding guru and not only got unstuck from the floor, but flawlessly dodged every single obstacle between him and the exit. Very consistent game. Anyways, Carl made it out, and even though he entered with 10 wolves, he only left with 5, but all that matters is that he secured the artifact. He was somehow overweight that whole time, even though he was barely carrying anything. Anyways, he can't bring them all home, which is ironic after spending all that time leading them out of the cave. But General Lee is the lucky wolf that gets to come because he pretended to be stuck the whole time and he's still full health right now. So Carl dropped him off at the green ob so he can fight a giant spider, and now he has 3 out of 4 artifacts to take down Doug. The only cave left in this entire run is the swamp cave for the artifact of the immune, and the overseer, of course. Carl already has the phoenix for the tech rep, but he still needs to take down the alpha broodmother for the tech helmet engram. So Carl brought Katy Perry halfway across the map and healed her up, which took the rest of the day. And now at the beginning of day 93, it's time to see if this plan can actually work. Carl made sure that Katy Perry was on ignore group whistles and following him. He had no saddle, so he had to make sure that she auto-roared while away from the broodmother, because if Katy Perry dies, it's game over. It's already day 93, so if they fail now, it's too late to try again. This is Carl's last chance. And just like that, Carl actually did it. Alpha Mama Brood was down, and he has the engram for the tech helmet. It did come at a pretty heavy cost though, because like 10 Rexes died in that fight, and so did Katy Perry. And everybody else is also really low health. So after bringing the artifacts to Red Ob just to prepare for Doug, Carl headed back to his base. Nice. He definitely needs to replace those deceased Rexes, but there's no way that he's gonna have time to raise more, so he resorted to leveling some of the older ones from earlier. They still have the good stats, they just don't have imprint. imprint, which honestly should be fine because the other ones are still good, and he's going back to Gamma for Doug and the Overseer. Now all that's left to do is grind out a tech helmet so he can do the swamp cave. The tech replicator needs to be crafted at an obelisk though. So he grabbed all the element from the boss kills and a ton of pickaxes. This time he was heading to the blue obelisk. Oh, one of my boss Rexes is here. Oh, he's stuck. Yeah, it checks out. The reason that Carl picked the blue obelisk is because there's a lot of crystal and metal rocks nearby, so he wouldn't need to travel very far in between trips. And he already brought the element here, so now he just needs 600 crystal, 800 poly, and a whopping 5k metal in the terminal. And 150 black pearls. That's gonna require killing some squids, but we're not gonna talk about that right now. The 600 crystal is super easy, so Carl started with that. Oh, right, that's gonna be annoying. Carl is gonna have to use his wyvern for weight and make a lot of trips. So now he had the crystal and the element and was low-key scared of the black pearls. So now it's time for the metal grind. This is gonna take a while. You get the point. Roughly 1 hour later, about halfway through day 96, Carl had farmed 10,000 raw metal. I was actually expecting the pickaxes to be shattered by now and for Carl to have to farm carnivores for more, but this journeyman one is like indestructible. Anyways, there's only 2 things left to farm now, and that's organic polymer and black pearls. The polymer is easy. Carl just has to absolutely destroy a family of penguins, but organic polymer spoils, so he needs to do that last. That means his first course of business is to farm black pearls. And on this map, there's not many options, so Carl's gonna have to farm some Tusos. This is gonna be difficult. So after grabbing his best crossbow and some arrows, Carl mounted his inhaler and set sail. You might be wondering how he plans to kill one of the strongest creatures in the ocean on a little Diplo that would die in one hit. Well, I was just about to explain the plan to you guys, but Carl just found an alpha mosasaur. Well, that's pretty scary. These guys actually drop black pearls as well. A lot more black pearls. So Carl decided to go for it because the Mosas have the same mechanics as squids. He swam down and he shot a trank arrow at the specimen straight through the ocean's current, and then Mosa Lisa got angry, swimming straight towards Carl's inhaler. And see, normally this would mean instant death, but there's actually a mechanic in this game where Mosas and Tusos will not go above a certain depth in the water. This allows Carl to just abuse this mechanic and shoot the dude while towing the line between being Carl's mortal enemy and just an invisible background character. Carl almost got swallowed whole a couple times, but overall it went pretty well. Well, at least it was going well, until he ran out of arrows. So Carl decided to grab General Lee and swim him down there to suplex the Mosa and finish him off. He had to keep hopping off to grab oxygen, but I mean, he was surviving. And then Carl slayed the Megalodons on the way, which made him very happy because they were harassing him this entire time. But then Carl realized he didn't account for something. Yeah, wolves can't breathe underwater. I mean, obviously. Carl didn't think that it would take that long to swim down, but yeah, that didn't work out at all. The Mosa is really low health, but he already used like 250 arrows, so he had to grab Flappy Burn and headed over to Carno Island. And it's not much, but it's 74 arrows. All right, let's finish this dude. When you find the perfect height like this, you can kind of just be on foot and kind of move up and down just a little bit, and they kind of hover below you because they can't go any higher. It's super easy and it's pretty broken, to be honest, so use that as you will. Let's go! Oh, that fish had some really nice pants. And 100 black pearls. Nice. But these black pearls weighed more than Carl's future, so he wasn't able to carry them all at once. He had to, like, juggle them across the land to get them to track Wazowski. Man's tongue is impressive. And after a second trip, Carl had a total of 100 black pearls, but it still wasn't enough. Carl still needs 105 more black pearls for the replicator and a tech helmet. So he took a quick detour to Carno Island to farm some more trank arrows, which goes surprisingly fast when you have a wyvern. And then Carl stopped back at his crib to pick up his inhaler, and they headed to the southeast corner of the map. This spot is a pretty common spawn for Tusos, and there's almost always one here. They give a lot less pearls than that alpha mosasaur, but they're a lot easier to kill. So when they arrived, Carl started swimming into the depth, and sure enough, Squidward was just chilling in Bikini Bottom. Carl had a lot more arrows than he thought because he found some in Flappy Burn, so he really should have plenty for this. These guys won't go into the shallow water either, so it's basically the same strategy that he used with the mosasaur, but if they do grab you, it's wraps, so Carl definitely needs to stay alert here. It didn't take too many shots until Squidward became a coward, and as Carl chased that man halfway across the Atlantic, he witnessed Squidward shoot ink puddles everywhere like 4 times, and all was going pretty well until Carl got hit by said ink and almost had a heart attack. But luckily, Squidward wasn't interested in attacking. He just kept running, and Carl managed to confirm the kill. Nice. He looted 35 pearls from Squidward's life savings, which isn't too bad, but that did take most of the day and time is running out pretty fast. So Carl brought the pearls over to the red ob for safekeeping, and he found a stack of arrows that he left in here from Scorched Earth. Oh, I wish I would have had these for the Mosa. His next stop was the southwest corner of the map. He was hoping to find another Tuso. So on day 99, after deleting these trilobites for a massive profit of 3 black pearls, gee, thanks, they began their journey to the corner of the ocean. Since Squidward was deceased, Carl was hoping to find Squilliam this time. He didn't actually find any squids, but he did come across something else. Oh, sea scorpions. I forgot about those. These little sea scorpions are actually called Eurypterids. They do give black pearls, but they also pack a punch and will easily knock you out in one tap. So Carl did want to farm some of these dudes for black pearls, but their bodyguards were very angry. Somebody needs to ban me from making puns. Carl started picking them off one by one, and then this happened. Wait, Fred did that? Anyway, Carl continued flinging projectiles underwater until all of the light bulbs were extinguished. I hate the ocean in this game, man. And now he finally had some alone time with these menacing looking fellas. Oh, I wasn't expecting him to die that easy. So apparently these guys are giving anywhere from 7 to 15 pearls each. Fred, stop, bro. So yeah, after extorting the loot from Fred's inventory, Carl already had another 35 black pearls. This method is way better than the Tusos, and he probably should have just been doing this from the start. Carl never even thought to farm these guys before, but it was working out amazingly right now. He did have a pretty full inventory at this point though, so he headed back to drop off what he had into the red obelisk. And it looks like he only needs about 25 more. So after his inhaler got assaulted by a Karen, they headed back into the abyss. And they managed to find one more. It is a good thing that he got those pearls earlier though, because it seems like they've already been cleared out for the most part. It took a while, but after just circling around for a while, he managed to find 2 more Eurypterids that most likely just respawned. And then Carl grabbed a couple trilobites for insurance and almost got eaten by an aquatic leprechaun. But when he made it back to the obelisk, they actually had more than 205 black pearls. That's enough for the tech rep and the helmet. That was so stressful. So Carl met back up with Trike Wazowski and borrowed the other pearls from the mosasaur. And now the only ingredient left is polymer. Carl can't craft it, so he's gonna have to go organic. But for some reason, all of the icebergs are just empty. They're supposed to be filled with penguins, but every single time I check on this game, there's never anything there. Do you guys have that same problem? Like, I don't know if it's intended or not, but that'd be such a weird thing to remove from the game. Like, who doesn't love a penguin oasis? Anyways, there's still a ton of them just chilling around the edges of the snow. So now it's time for a penguin dance party.
So let us dance this night away.
So, where do penguins go to vote? The North Pole. Anyways, he's got the poly. And it's also day 100 now, so even though Carl was very close, he did technically fail to beat the challenge in 100 days. But don't worry though, because he's gonna finish strong and he's gonna see if this plan can still work. So Carl cleared the tri-state area to make sure it's safe, and then he proceeded to grab Hotwing, a bird made from fire, and put him in the snow. It was time to cook some metal. Wait, I have to do this 5,000 times? I thought I was gonna smelt like more at the same time like an indie forge. So according to my calculations, cooking this metal is going to take almost 6 hours. That's 12 days. I thought I had everything planned out and everything was gonna be possible and work out great, but no, I didn't think about this. So yeah, I deeply apologize to all the metal connoisseurs out there that want to watch this thing smelt for 6 hours, but I'm gonna speed this up a little bit. If you're curious, serious, yes, I did spawn the metal in. I didn't just sit here for 6 hours. But anyway, Carl started putting all of the items in the terminal, preparing for the big craft. But it seems that we have a problem. Oh, there's not enough slots for the organic poly. Yeah, apparently you can only craft a tech rep in an obelisk if you use hard polymer. Organic polymer doesn't stack high enough, so it can't all fit. You can just go to a supply drop where it has unlimited slots, and then you could craft it with organic poly all day. But Carl is level 1, and white drops require level 3. Where did all that hard poly come from? All jokes aside, this run is obviously no longer legit. Like, it wouldn't be possible in the actual game. But the poly has been summoned, so let's see where this goes. Alright, we finally did it. Let's place this bad boy down. Alright, thanks for watching, guys. I'm joking, I will continue, but yeah, this run is now 4 times not legit. Carl can't start boss fights, there's not enough slots to use organic poly for the replicator, he can't place the tech rep on the ground because he can't craft structures to place it on, except for tech foundations, which he can craft, but require the tech replicator to craft. And on top of all of that, he went a bit over day 100. Good times. Anyways, there's a magical thatch foundation sitting here, and we're not gonna question where it came from. Putting a tech rep on a thatch foundation has got to be some sort of crime. So Carl threw 600 pounds of metal over to the tech rep, and he farmed a little bit more crystal. Now it was time to craft himself a tech helmet. Wait, what? Dude, the chest piece doesn't say that? Come on, man. Okay, you might have noticed that Carl's now wearing a helmet. Look, we already established that I had to do some things about 5 times now. So the question is, can you beat the island at level 1? Well, the answer is no, and I kind of wasted 100 hours to figure that out. But it is possible to do everything on the map except for the swamp cave. Let me know if you guys can think of any other solutions for this, because I had everything planned out and I was so excited to pull off, and yeah, I'm pretty disappointed for Carl right now. But we still got to this point, and using a couple commands just to not die from poison in one cave kind of sucks, but that's where we're at this point, and I'm not gonna leave you guys hanging. Carl is going into the cave with his off-brand tech helmet. Well, at least he tried to. I guess the game just knows that he's not supposed to be wearing it. So Carl, oh look, there's a gas mask in this bush over here. And now Carl's looking like a bit of a menace. This cave was easy. In fact, the hardest part was when Fred decided to be overweight and there were unlimited bushes on the floor here. So Carl wasn't able to drop Fred because there's the same input button for both of the functions for some reason. Anyway, Carl grabbed the artifact. Bro looted an entire village. Yeah, I'm still a bit upset because this cave wasn't even hard, but Carl spent 30 days trying to get his tech helmet and it didn't even work. Anyways, Carl moved on and he went to the green ob to upload all of these boss rexes. And then he headed back to his base and grabbed all of those boss rexes. And now on day 114, Carl was ready to fight his mortal enemy. In one corner, we have a bunch of boss rexes that can't find their saddles. We have this dire wolf named Doom after some random guy from a Discord server. And we have a little otter named Fred. He's wearing Carl's hat. And in the other corner, we have Doug. Carl was definitely not prepared for this fight. He didn't have time to fully heal the rexes from earlier. And on top of that, he has high health rexes. The best strategy to fight Doug is to use lower health and higher melee. He didn't have any time to set that up though, and he's gonna have to win this through brute force. So as they entered the arena, he put all the rexes on passive and lined them up in the safe zone. He tried to get Doug's attention with a few warning shots. He was gonna make sure that Doug came to him. Carl has no room for error. And just like that, Doug eliminated the entire army. Except he actually didn't. Remember early on when Carl put some Rexes on ignore group whistles? He forgot to change one back. This was not planned at all, but it might buy Carl just enough time to finish this. Well, that's one way to slay a dragon. So Doom the Direwolf consumed Doug, eating about 500,000 calories that day, and Carl looted Doug's savings account. So that was the story of how Carl, the level 1 hobbit, Doom the Direwolf, and Fred the Otter slayed a dragon named Doug. The reason the Rexes died is because the Fire Breath deals more damage if you have more health, so Carl should have had a different Rex army for the fight with less health and more melee to kill him faster. None of that would have mattered in the end though, because the challenge ended with the Swamp Cave. I'm still a bit disappointed that the challenge went the way it did because it feels like there's nothing I can do, it's just not possible. But it was still really fun to try. Make sure you guys join my Discord server, link in the description, if you want to be in a 100 player simulate video. And if Fred is your father, then you have to subscribe to my channel. Oh yeah, Carl also wanted me to tell you guys, if you want to see me try to beat ARK Scorched Earth Ascended on 0 times harvesting rates, click right here.